Live in 5, 4, 3.
North Idaho College, NIC North Idaho College Board of Trustees meeting tonight. Everybody would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We have a verification of quorum. We have all 5 board members here tonight. Thank you for all being here. Introduction of guests. I don't see a lot of guests here tonight, but we do have a couple of candidates for the NIC trustee positions, Gary Kaufman and Todd Banducci. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming and observing our board meeting tonight. Approval and review of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I've reviewed the minutes and make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. There was no one signed up for public comments, so we'll skip right on down to celebrating success. Curly Lawson, I'm here. There you are. So we're having dinner with us earlier, so welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, President Dunlap, and other guests, I am not Curly Lawson, is the first confession.
You have the same hairstyle.
But I am pleased to introduce Curly Lawson to you. We have the good fortune of having hired Curly just this fall. I do have a length of service over him. He was hired about 2 weeks after I was, so I have seniority at least in that regard. We are so pleased to have Curly here, and in the short time that he's been here already, he's done an outstanding job working with our multicultural and veteran students. And we're so pleased to have him come and join you tonight, along with a couple of his students, and share with you some of the successes that he's had to this point and some of the plans for the future. So I'm proud to introduce to you Curly Lawson.
Right. Thank you very much. And I do have 2 students from the Veterans Club with me. If I'm going to share the spotlight and the success, they're going to share it with me. So join Misty, please join me. So as Graydon said, and has yet to let me forget, he has been here 2 weeks longer than I have. I hear that every day. But what I want to do right now is take a moment to go over the student success that we're having in a relatively short time with the Veterans. Feel free to come on.
Not done yet.
And beginning with some of the issues that veterans, some of the issues that need to be addressed with veterans in order for them to be successful in school. These issues range from an environment that embraces veteran culture to issues of PTSD and traumatic brain injury. For those that have never been around veterans, we tend to speak in a language of alphabet soup, acronyms, and while that may make it very easy, if you're in full battle rattle at the FOB and you're stepping outside of the green zone, doesn't really help you here at NIC. So having a vet club allows us to come together so we can be in an environment that we understand each other, but it also allows veterans to get together that have some more serious issues such as post-traumatic stress. And we can, in an environment that we can control the lighting, we can control what's going on in that space. So if a veteran is overstimulated, if a veteran has been triggered by something that happens on a routine basis and in a class by things that most of us wouldn't even begin to imagine. To also veterans that have issues ranging from diagnosed traumatic brain injury to undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. So if it's undiagnosed, it's still a traumatic brain injury, and that can have issues ranging from cognitive to memory to other factors. So having an environment that we can address those issues can definitely lead to the veterans' success. Yes, I actually can say that word. Another reason that's very important to have a space for the veterans, it's a norming experience. It allows them to come together and understand they're not the only one going through this. It's tragic beyond words to be on a campus of 5,000 people and think you're the only one going through this experience. If we can bring them together, they can succeed together. So it's been very, very interesting in a relatively short period of time, seeing this group come together and support each other, study together, lean on each other, teach each other things so that they're not going through this experience alone. This increases the value of the veterans' experience at NIC, this vet-centric experience that we can't put a price on, and none of us really knew what it was going to be about, is actually encouraging people that are saying, well, you know, I really like coming to school because I get to do this plus this. So this non-tangible that is, after we've, you know, moved into a space, is relatively free of cost from this point forward, is actually enhancing the motivation for the veterans. As I mentioned, it's being able to study in a non-triggering environment. So for a veteran that is working on, I don't know, a history report about Napoleonic Wars, for instance, or something more recent such as the Vietnam War, if they were in the library studying like that and read a detailed account of someone's wartime experience, it could trigger a flashback to their wartime experience. So as a social worker, I'm an MSW, so as a social worker, I can be right there to work with them literally in that moment. The benefit to this is if a veteran is on campus and they become triggered and it increases their anxiety, then NIC becomes an unsafe place for them. We don't want this campus to ever be an unsafe place for the veterans. That's something that I've worked for in the relatively short time that I've been here, and it's something I'll work for every day. I don't ever want this campus to be unsafe for them, and we want to promote a sense of not only safety, but a sense of, for veterans, mission accomplishment. Let's see. In order to accomplish that, I work in conjunction with the veteran certifying official, Keisha Siegel. Keisha and I, again, in a short period of time, have formed a very dynamic partnership. And actually, from the day that veteran is certified to start school, we can start working any issues that would be barriers to success. So instead of finding out at midterms that someone has an F, we can check in and say, well, how are you doing? We can actually find out what their wartime experiences were. I'll ask, well, were you any vehicle rollovers? Were you any IEDs? Were you ever diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury? Because I know that that's going to bring, you know, certain issues with it, and I can focus on those from literally from day one. Sometimes even before they've started, just like, well, this could happen, and let's set you up with a tutor. Let's make sure that you know where all the resources on the campus are. Speaking of knowing where the resources on campus are, I've had an opportunity to collaborate with many of those resources on campus. Campus security, which most people might not think of as a resource, but for veterans, it's definitely a resource. I want to make them aware of any issues that the veteran students might have, and I definitely want to make them aware that if there's ever any instance that they would need to interact with the veteran, how to approach that situation for their safety as well as the veterans. I've worked with the Center for Educational Access. Again, students that have, you know, brain injury, PTSD, they might need certain accommodations, and we're learning what those accommodations might be. And it allows me to basically formulate a package. Each student is obviously an individual, but as things trend over time, if I'm saying, well, you know, the students with TBIs, they need this type of response. The students with PTSD, they need this type of access. We can make that process leaner. So instead of, you know, reinventing a wheel, you know, for every student, we can maybe have, you know, some structures in place that student can immediately access and begin their education. Let's see, some of the other things that we're doing, it allows us to bring various resources from off campus onto campus. Many veteran students have to engage with the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration is the second largest bureaucracy in the United States, exceeded only by the Department of Defense. When you're on active duty, you have an entire chain of command to support you. When you're off active duty, it is Misty versus the second largest bureaucracy in the United States. It is Joey versus the second largest bureaucracy in the United States. Sometimes they have to leave campus to deal with VA-related issues. As much as possible, we can bring those people here so they don't miss a day of school going to Spokane. They don't miss a day of school going to see a service officer in Post Falls. We can bring those here. That will definitely increase the student success. What's happening so far with the, very expensive real estate that you all have given us? The veteran students are investing and engaging at NIC. We had an event yesterday, Veterans Against Domestic Violence. And while the original plan, my goal was, because I'm a social worker, I needed to be there, and I was going to have one student, in 20 to 30-minute segments, be there. The reality was we had 8 to 10 students there the entire time. We had 8 to 10 students that, until yesterday probably hadn't done a lot of research or given a lot of thought about domestic violence, campus security, how to stay safe, but yet they were out there engaged with the rest of the student population, encouraging them to be safe, explaining these situations, encouraging students that had never even thought about their own safety, how to be safe. So I think we're doing a good job. Where do we want to be 2 to 3 years from now? There are several things that I'm working on. One is a plan to track veterans that self-identify with post-traumatic stress and TBI. So we can measure them, over time to see, are these students having issues, are there barriers to their success that we can address here? Right now, I've been here not even long enough to give you a snapshot of that. So in the future, I hope to be able to have the type of data that says this certain percentage of students have these types of barriers, and we can eliminate those barriers in this manner. Let's see, another thing that we're working on is, I'm certainly working on, is fostering community relationships that can lead to veteran employment after graduation and enhance the likelihood of the veteran completing a 4-year degree. Basically, what we're doing is working to ensure the veterans meet the stated goals of Idaho goals, as well as the mission of the State Board of Education strategic plan. I want my personal goal, every veteran that comes to this campus completes and moves on to either employment or a 4-year degree. And I don't really think that's too much to ask for. Consequently, even though we have a brand new space, which I tremendously appreciate, we are bursting at the seams, and I'm very, very happy to say that. So working a goal sometime in the future is a way to bring all of our vet-centric resources on campus into one location. That would be ideal. So I don't know, Misty, Joey, you'd like to say how things have improved for you?
From the beginning, we've been trying to create a community for veterans that inspires a safe and warm environment for them to hang out in a social arena. And this real estate you guys have given us has given us that opportunity to both socialize and help each other with those things that we are trying to do as far as getting our benefits, moving on to employment, things like that. So there's a lot of good things that just having this space has done for us as students and as veterans. And that's in conjunction with both the Veterans Club as well as Keisha Siegel's office. It's just become a community on this campus that has really become the template for the Pacific Northwest. We're about to put together a forum in which we take all of the Pacific Northwest community colleges and regular colleges and explain what we have done here and have them take that to their colleges. Because the idea is not so much a college base, but a veterans base, and we're helping everyone in the Pacific Northwest with that. So hopefully we grow as a community.
I guess the only thing I can really say is I'm Curly's work study, so I'm there pretty much all the time. I see people come in and I see them stressed out and beyond, like they don't know what to do. So they talk to Curly for a few minutes and they walk out, and you can just see that something has been lifted from their shoulders. I mean, he's there as an outlet. I mean, him and Keisha, they'll drop everything to help a student. And I mean, we can't tell you how much that we appreciate the office space that we've been given, because like Joey and Curly both said, the space that you guys gave us allows, service members, prior service members to get together and just have a place where we can go that we'll feel comfortable. I can sit down and talk to Joey because I know that he's faced similar circumstances that I have, and I don't feel outnumbered. So where like if I sat down in the sub and tried to do homework, I'd be constantly watching over my back, and just on the lookout for something that's going on, whereas I can sit down there and feel confident and understand that nothing's going to happen down there Because like Curly said, he's there if something happens, if somebody comes in crisis. And I don't think that that could have been possible if we hadn't, you know, been given the space that we were given. So I guess all we can really do is say thank you for everything. Thank you for supporting our club, and thank you for doing everything to support the veterans at this school.
And also, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to express our experience here so far, our vision of the future, how we plan on connecting not only with members in the North Idaho community, but also throughout the region. How we connect with resources that will, foster a really healthy relationship with North Idaho College and the rest of the community, but also foster relationships beyond that. So I would be more than happy to answer any questions, not only now, but at any time in the future.
Ken?
Curly, thank you very much for the explanation of the program and what you're doing. Could you give us some kind of an idea about the number of students that I mean, I know the programs are still in some evolution and that sort of thing, but could you give us some idea of how many students are being served right now?
I can. As the number of veterans on campus is a little bit of well, I don't want to say mystery, but sometimes it's unknown because of some issues that they've gone through, ranging from Iraq all the way back to Vietnam. Some veterans don't want to identify themselves as veterans. So we know that there are approximately 400 veterans or so on campus, and then I can actually infer that there's probably an additional 50 or 60 that haven't identified themselves. So of that number so far, I know that I've been in direct contact with roughly 80. I see 50 during the course of the week, but those numbers are growing. And that's what's just amazes me every day, is that those numbers are growing, that I meet someone new every day. I had a conversation with a student earlier this afternoon that said, I didn't know that there's a veteran advisor here. And I said, we're doing everything we can to get the word out, but he wants to come in and talk with me. So as the word gets out, I'll meet more and more of the students. And to prevent that from happening in the future, one thing that we want to do is address veterans as they enroll in NIC. So I want to essentially meet them from day one so they can be a part of not only just the vet club, but also be aware of where they fit in the veteran environment on campus.
Yes, Ron?
Mr. Chairman, we owe you a great big thanks for what you're doing in our community. But there's one problem that I see, and that is the lack of education for the citizenry. And there's too many people that really don't understand the brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was wondering if possibly with what you're doing here along with it, you could reach out to the community more by maybe doing a series of articles in the press explaining what really takes place in the life of a veteran when they're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, or now have brochures available that could be maybe in the articles referred to, that people can pick up this information. Because we just about all have friends or relatives that have been there, and it would be very helpful to have that kind of information available.
I would be delighted. I absolutely would. There are several factors involved in the misperception of what PTSD and traumatic brain injury is. First off, Hollywood and the media. Hollywood frequently takes dramatic license with PTSD, ranging from Rambo to out of control rage monsters, and with various things in between. The traumatic brain injury, it's depending on the severity of the traumatic brain injury. It may range from, symptoms that literally incapacitate an individual nearly most of the time, to moments of forgetfulness, difficulty in concentration. So it's not a one-size-fits-all injury. And unlike, other obvious physical injuries or things that are well known, if Joey broke his arm and he said he had a broken arm, we'd all have a very good concept of what a broken arm meant, what the recovery for a broken arm is, what Joey could do, what Joey couldn't do. If Joey said he has traumatic brain injury, there are a handful of people that probably understand the extent of that. and what that recovery process can be. So I'd be willing to engage that in any way to get that information out, because not only would it help the citizenry at large, but it also help the people that have traumatic brain injuries. It would also help their friends, their families understand that, again, you're not alone. You know, norming that is very, very important to say, if someone has a traumatic brain injury and these types of behaviors occur, that's consistent with the injury. And you can't snap out of it any more than you can snap out of a broken arm.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Christie.
Well, I just want to tell you, I'm a veteran, and so I couldn't be prouder of this program on this campus. And I'd like to thank my fellow board, administration, and president that made this happen. This was something we saw we wanted, and we're already celebrating success. That's fabulous. I also want to tell you that you're well known. I had the opportunity to work a veterans job fair on behalf of the police department. So of course I took with me my NIC catalog, and I tried to do a little of both. And so many veterans came up to me, and I had the page turned to criminal justice, but so many people came up to me and said, well, do you know Curly? And I hadn't had an opportunity to meet you, but they talked about you. They talked about the center, the area that they now have on campus, and they were so pleased and so energized and spoke very highly of you. So thank you for just in the short amount of time what you've done to reach out, and I just know it's going to be even more in the future.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, no.
Judy.
Tell us where you're located.
I'm sorry.
Where are you located?
Physically in the building, we're on the lower level of the sub in room 004, yes, of this building.
So anybody can come to find you anytime?
Yes, you may want
Televised
to,
this?
you may want to call ahead just to make sure that I'm not with a student, but absolutely, anyone at any time.
So drop-ins are welcome as we,
Drop-ins are always welcome, and we always have coffee. It's hot, it's free, so feel free to come by. That's pretty much an unstated rule that at this point is now a stated rule. We always have coffee, it's hot, and it's free.
Other questions? One question I have.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you've heard Curly make mention tonight a couple times of Keisha, his comrade in crime here, and she's done such a good job over the years in supporting veterans here on campus. I want her to be recognized as well as if we could, and I know she's dying in the audience to be identified and to stand up. So if we could recognize Keisha Siegel as well.
Oh, very good.
And I did have one question, and this might be for Graydon or Mark or even Curly also. I know we've been looking at recruiting veterans, and we just did the grant for the airframe and composites that we're going to be rolling out here relatively soon. That's going to be specified for veterans there. What other types of programs are we looking at to continue to recruit veterans and give them opportunities here?
What are we doing to recruit veterans? That is such a great question. Well, first off, actually, I was fortunate enough to be at an advertising meeting earlier in the week. In order for veterans to want to attend NIC, they need to understand, first off, they are welcome at NIC, that they will be safe at NIC. So we're laying the foundation right now for things that will recruit veterans and help retain veterans. The idea that a veteran could come here and essentially under one roof have one-stop shopping, engage with the veteran service officer, which frequently is something that takes hours out of their day. That there's staff from the VA that will come here to meet with that veteran is something that is very important for them. So as I go out into the community, I went to a PTSD workshop yesterday morning here in Coeur d'Alene. As I meet other providers, as I meet other people in the community, anything and everything that I can possibly use and utilize here at NIC, we're definitely going to do. So we are strategizing how we're going to not only establish this framework, but be able to promote this framework that says, you know, veterans are welcome at NIC, that veterans are understood at NIC, that veterans can succeed at NIC.
Perfect. Any other questions for Curly?
Thank you very much.
Curly, thank you.
All right,
Joey?
thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all very much.
Next on the agenda is a special report, the Education Corridor History and Infrastructure Project. John Mueller and Kevin Jester.
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's a privilege to be here tonight. And along with you, I would like to say, Curly, Joe, Misty, Keisha, job well done. Good on you, and wish you the best success here. Okay. John and I have the privilege tonight of sharing with you a little bit of history, a little bit of a journey of the campus here. About a year ago, we had the opportunity to sit down with a group of, a small group of us, 4 of us, and take a look at the history, to take a look at where we are today in terms of campus, properties, facility, and to do a little bit of visioning. What we have to share with you tonight is the results of some of that. Some of it you'll recognize, some of it you'll go, whoa, is that possible? None of this is a solution. When I say it's a vision, I mean that, it's a vision. It's been a great journey. I've really enjoyed it. I've been a resident of Coeur d'Alene going on 35 years this spring. 34 years ago, I landed in the Fort Grounds, and I still live in the Fort Grounds. I've seen a lot of change on this campus, and the past couple of years have brought some significant change that's really, really been wonderful. And so thank you for your guidance in that. Thank you for seeing that those kinds of things happen here in our community and that you're a part of it. I know that this campus is more than just academics. You're a player in the community, and you have a significant part in this community. So as you look to the future, we obviously wish the best for you, and we'll hope that some of the vision that we have to offer is a vision that gives you some traction as you look to the future. So I'm going to get out of John's way, and he's going to throw a whole lot of information at you in a short period of time. But we'll be here for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Good evening, everybody. As we start the presentation, I'd like to just have you consider this aerial view. This is the sum total of the campus, 79 years, and next year you'll be celebrating 80 years. But as we go forward, I want you to think about how much has happened and then how much there is yet to happen in the future, thinking out another 75 to 80 years. And certainly as we go forward, we all know about humble beginnings. This document on the lower left, you really can't see it very well in this slide because of the projection and the scale of the room, but I was very interested in this because the contours, the original contours of this site, the fort, but also the gathering place, and I know you all were there today when we dedicated the sculpture, and Chief Saijan talked about, how the Coeur d'Alenes were here and this was their place, and there's some interesting things related to those contours that kind of inform our discussions about campus planning and growth. Going back from 1933 into the 40s, you'll recognize this photo looking to the west. There's the gymnasium, the classroom wing, the current administration building, some of the officers' quarters and structures, but everything else has pretty much changed since then. As we talk tonight about some of the concepts of planning and growth and development, if we had a clean site and we talked about what would be the best way, the most ideal way to arrange a campus, we would talk about a campus core where we would have at the very center the library, the administration, the student union, and then around that would revolve the academic structures and buildings of various types and classifications. We would also have support parking and access from the community. We would have open green space, and we would also have a residential component and neighborhoods that go with it. So as we go forward and talk more a little bit, I'll refer back to this, but again, just a discussion about the ideal arrangement of those campus functions. Looking at 1999, this is really your first adopted campus master plan. This is still the adopted campus master plan in the eyes of DPW. And how I know that is that Kevin and I became involved with the collaborative education building here a few years ago. And we had quite a discussion about where we were going to site that building, and they had no way to relate to this site right here that was just acquired. For your reference, this is River Avenue, this is Hubbard, and so this plan envisioned this very tight and compact campus with a central open space, and then of course you had just acquired the Robin Hood Campground property. And so going forward, now we've almost doubled the size of the campus, and that has fostered quite a bit of discussion internally and externally. We know that the city has moved forward with, I think, an offering for greater involvement on the part of the four-year institutions, invited them to campus, and as they began to take a look at what was possible, at that time, I think I was working with the University of Idaho on a master plan for a branch campus in Idaho Falls, and they had asked me to just take a look at this site to tell them what was possible. What is the carrying capacity of the Harbor Center site? What are the things that we could do with it in terms of structures? What are the common areas where maybe if we do have a separate campus where we might overlap with North Idaho College? And it turns out there's quite a bit that was possible in terms of waterfront development and new structures and the ability to have a fairly significant branch campus, again relying mostly on surface parking, but kind of a realignment of everything that was possible and had been previously approved on that site. And of course, these are the aerial views showing from that planning effort what was possible. At the same time, Raleigh Juergens had contacted me and said, as long as you're doing that, let's do a little vision planning of our own. And we want to understand maybe how, if we have a common space here just south of Hubbard at Northwest Boulevard, how our campus how that might inform our process, what that might lead us to think about in terms of growth and development. And so we did some vision planning with a committee and developed, I think, an idea of expanding in, of course, to the mill site, but also having this ring road that would revolve or allow perimeter access to the campus going south. And as we go forward, you'll see a lot of similarities in a lot of these studies that were done that all played a role, I think, in the shaping of the Ed corridor. This led to, I think, a formulation of siting of certain buildings and opportunities. For example, this large square building right there had actually two functions noted. We called it the big building because at that time Jerry G., I think, had noted that for PTE needs, he would need a building about 200 by 200. And it turns out that to have a new basketball gym, arena, multi-purpose facility, rec center was a building that was about 200 by 200. And so, not wanting to get into the programming and site selection for either one of those, we were just charged with taking a look at how we might place that and how that might inform the design. Still a lot of reliance in this idea about surface parking. Again, I think the reality was at the time that at $10,000 a space or more, structured parking was still out there quite a ways, and we were going to have to rely on surface parking. Again, looking at it from the air, not too bad looking campus. It allowed us to have overlaps with what the U of I and the other institutions were doing. It also gave us a new access very similar to what we have today off of River, and I think opportunities then in the future for a parking garage. Well, this was absorbed by the community, and some interesting things did happen as we moved along. I think the wastewater treatment folks found out that in the need to expand to about, I believe, 12.5 million gallons a day, and plus the upgrading of certain laws related to water quality, that they had a bigger challenge on their hands. And so this plan emerged where they were moving now well into the Harbor Center site. And so that began to kind of change the thinking about how the Harbor Center site could or would be used. And so I think the parties came together in a collective planning effort and retained a firm called MIG out of Portland and San Francisco. And I think you all are familiar with this education corridor master plan that was done. Not terribly specific, it wasn't intended to be, but it was more broad in nature and wanted to kind of talk about ideas and ways in which the area could be developed. But some interesting things came out of it in terms of ideas that would inform and shape the campus. And I'll try to go through those. We can't see this because of the smallness of the text. The first one, take advantage of the river connection for buildings and spaces. The second one, design a road network to maximize buildable areas. The third, down, create a network of identifiable focal points and open spaces. 4, create multiple points of entry and exit for the campus. And the fifth one, last at the bottom, strengthen a sense of arrival through gateways. Also, they talked about orienting retail along Northwest Boulevard, really speaking to mixed-use development. The next one, use building forms to shape and activate public spaces, and we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get to the collaborative education building and the planning that happened there. Number 8, to the best of our ability, screen that wastewater treatment plant using landscape or buildings or hardscape elements. And then finally, at the bottom, have an intensively developed campus that focuses kind of inward on the open spaces that are developed. With that plan in hand, then the mayor took the education corridor idea through her connections on a national level, and the Mayor's Institute on City Design agreed to take this project up, and they came to town for, I believe, a 3-day charrette. I think many of you were involved with that. It was a wonderful, I think, opportunity to talk about the ideas. Again, I think the plan that emerged from that was a compact campus focused on central green spaces, perimeter roads. But an interesting thing came out of it that, again, kind of drives the discussion, and my pointer just kind of went dead on me here. There we go. You all recall that they talked about maybe carving out an inlet that would be a series of cascades, different levels that would treat stormwater, because at the time there was some discussion about the ability for the city to separate that stormwater piece out from what was currently going into the wastewater treatment plant. And they also talked about breaching the dike and opening the campus up to the lake while preserving the opportunity to, during flood stage, to close it off when we needed to. They really felt like this green connection south to the beach was an important aspect of the plan. There were other things with respect to bridge abutments for a connection across the river, and various pedestrian and bicycle networks that I think would be established. So with that in hand, I think at that time the board and the foundation were working to acquire the property. And this plan emerged. Jim Coleman and members of the foundation contacted me to just take a very quick look at what the capability of the mill site properties were, and that in concert with the vacant parcels on the south part of the campus, how many building sites, how many potential opportunities for future development were there in terms of this acquisition and hope for the future. And so the beginnings of the road network emerged in this North Campus concept plan. I think we really call it an access plan, but you can begin to see how things took shape that eventually became the Ed Corridor. We ended up with 13 different development sites that were possible. We were also able to take the green core and push it south, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward here. At the same time, as I've talked earlier, we were retained to begin work on the planning of the collaborative education facility. And what was interesting about that project was DPW really struggled with wanting to place it anywhere but south of River Avenue. And so we spent quite a bit of time working with them because of the size of the building. I think this concept is 80,000 square feet, which is a really large building for many of the building sites south of River. And so we had existing parking that we wanted to maintain. We had some other things that I think drove us to place the building in this northwest corner here. And you'll see that the Ed Corridor was just beginning to, design was just beginning to emerge in terms of some of the things that we were getting down on paper. So we had all these parallel tracks of things happening in terms of planning and design, where buildings were being placed, and so we almost had to do a mini planning effort, but you can begin to see structurally how we might envision the next 75 years. What those buildings are, I couldn't say. I think that's rightly the board has said, you know, we program first, you know, and programs drive facilities, but there are some lists of things that, you know, we think that we should talk about. At the same time then, when the Ed Corridor plans were finalized, we moved forward with the plan unit development. process with the city of Coeur d'Alene. This was required by the annexation agreement when the mill property was annexed into the city. I think we had 1 year to begin the process, which we did. And so we took this forward in terms of trying to develop a master vision and based on the original access plan that was done, working with the foundation at the time of acquisition, and then also making use of the finalized ed corridor design. And so we came up with a series of 12 or 13 buildable sites, open space components that were required as part of the PUD process, and taking this forward, looking at it in terms of building flexibility into the plan with setbacks and build 2 lines. I think we had a shoreline ordinance that didn't allow us to build on these 2 lots. They waived that as part of the PUD process. And they also changed the zone for us that really allowed most of the university uses to happen on these pieces of property here. So comprehensively in an entitlement land use from that standpoint, there was quite a bit of work to get done and get accomplished. And then I think the planning also extended beyond the college boundaries in terms of connectivity and pedestrian access, both up and down Northwest Boulevard and back into existing city networks. This ended up being the final site plan to the extent that we had taken the collaborative education facility. I think that project was put on hold as we moved through the process. We're still not complete with the final design, but this is sort of where we ended up in terms of a product, 80,000 square foot building sitting at the intersection of the north roundabout. And then you'll begin to recognize some things that we're doing in terms of construction today. I think the board provided direction around the 1st of August to enhance green spaces, to build parking lots, and to do some other things, other improvements. And so you can see how this plan began to kind of working with the ed corridor infrastructure, began to kind of shape the steps that we're taking now in terms of site improvements. As we look to the future, in terms of the kind of campus that will emerge, obviously looking from the northeast to the south, the collaborative education building here, the library here, then we have a number of infill sites shown, and I think the opportunities to I think plan in terms of parking. The PUD allowed us to place 7-story parking garages on these 2 sites, which is significant because at some point in the future that parking will become financially viable and you'll need to take that step. So the things we've gotten improved, the flexibility we've built into that PUD are very important aspects of the campus growth and development in the future. So at that time, Priscilla kind of asked us to take a look, the former President Bell, the Ed Corridor project was finishing up, and so there was, I think, a discussion about what next steps might be. And I think as we had gotten involved, I think we asked a question, is this going to be more of a master planning circumstance, or is this a programming circumstance where programs drive facilities? And the answer that came back to us is we're more interested in a master planning, land planning look at this with a spin to facilities. And so that's the direction that we had taken. I know when the board got the white paper findings, you kind of said, rightly so, you know, programs and programming to drive facilities, so we want to have our education master plan in line going forward. And so nonetheless, we did involve some folks from out of town. A fellow by the name of Todd Johnson, a landscape architect from Design Workshop, Denver, Colorado. Todd is an internationally recognized landscape architect and land planner with specialties in mixed-use development and campus work. James Meyer is a senior partner with Opsis Architecture, similar credentials in terms of his work throughout the western United States and overseas. We have worked with both of these guys before. Really felt like that if we could get them to town for a day just to talk about and validate some things that had been done, that would be very important in terms of informing the board and informing maybe a next step process. So as we got together and talked and worked through, I think, the list and the opportunities, obviously at the top of the list, for near-term aspirations, a professional technical education facility. And I think you all have taken that step and are in some kind of design process right now, which is terrific. There was also some discussion about if we move out of the Headland building into a new facility, maybe possible, what do we do with the Headland building? And so is there an adaptive reuse study that is required? We don't know, but it would make sense that if that happens, certainly you're going to want to make use of that building in some fashion. Housing, even all the way back to the vision planning I had done in 2003 and 2004, was something that was stated as being necessary, and many of the students that were involved in the steering committee talked about that. We talk about a minimum of 100 beds. I think you could do a lot more if you wanted to, just because of the input we had gotten from that group going forward. Parking, in terms of both surface and structured, certainly is something that is going to need to be addressed as we go forward. And the 2 parking garage sites are approved for, as I said, 84 feet in height, but also the opportunity to go down 3 floors into the ground. So a total of 10 floors, or about 1,250 cars per structure if you want to, which is a lot of parking. But the neat thing about it is it's all within about 10 minutes of any building on campus, which is really about where you want to be, less than a quarter of a mile. And then there were needs with respect to physical education, wellness complex, rec center, those things have been talked about. A multi-use facility with the tribe, very similar to the Stensgar Pavilion that's down at the casino. And then also the opportunity to engage or partner with others on a mixed-use facility on Northwest Boulevard that could have some commercial in support of campus activities and community activities, but also kind of being matched up maybe with some housing. And so we wanted to talk to these guys about that and have them take a look at the work that's been done. What came of that were some overarching principles that we all felt were important as you go forward in your planning. Number one, this needs to be a crossroads institution, integrating academic, PTE, residential, entertainment, and mixed-use development. I think you all know that, but I just, again, we're reaffirming that, punching that ticket. That's very important. Crossroads concept. This is a campus that has many, many facets, many, many things that it provides for its students and for the community in the region. Promote and project community value, and we've seen what you have talked about in terms of the economic impact that this college has on Kootenai County and northern Idaho. Pursue a district approach to achieve the appropriate level of integration, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Focus on a critical mass or a density of siting of buildings and the interrelationships between those buildings, and then work with building shapes to form public spaces. And you have a great tradition of that already in terms of the plazas and public spaces and green spaces that you have on this campus. But in order to get that done, you have to probably have some rules for setbacks and connections, build to lines, and you need to avoid the complexities resulting from placing just buildings at random on site that tend to come back and haunt us and that we have to deal with after the fact. And protect and promote connectivity to the campus core. I think as I've talked about that central green space, one of the things that you're going to have to deal with at some point in the future are your tennis courts. And your tennis courts were built in the 70s, and they're probably in the last 20% of their life. And so in order to continue to have a tennis facility, you're going to have to invest at some point quite a bit of money. Whether that's a priority or not, I'll leave that to the judgment of this board, but really the central question is probably that tennis facility now needs to go somewhere else because you're in a complete rebuild mode. And so that would open up then that green core to the south, creating that connectivity for the internal part of the campus. And of course, just like this afternoon in the celebration we had for the public art, retain heritage, culture, art, and of course this fabulous natural setting that we all appreciate. And then of course, integrate sustainability, and that was one of the 7, I think, precepts that the Ed Corridor Group had going forward to do the project, and certainly we can talk more about the specifics of that if you like. There is a form of planning coming forward called eco-district planning. I won't go into that too much, but certainly sustainability has been woven into our plans for the Ed Corridor. So these fellows took a look at some broad concepts that had been put forth as part of the PUD. Specifically, this is the roundabout at River and College. This is the waterfront sites. There was some discussion about a pavilion with the tribe. There was also some discussion about, a culinary arts building, buildings of those size and scale. They didn't really get into function as much as feasibility, and they say these are good things that from a scale standpoint work very well. We also talked about this site adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant. Obviously, you have a parking garage here, wastewater treatment plant here. This is a building site, I think, for your deliberations as a board in the future that maybe has a number of different opportunities relating to both collaborative programs with the University of Idaho in water quality and wastewater treatment, but also professional technical opportunities with respect to meeting a workforce demand for people who actually know how to run, maintain, and take care of a wastewater treatment plant. And so there's some interesting possibilities that go with that site. We also, in the PUD process and in the planning process, took a look at this northeast quadrant. And again, they kind of agreed with us in terms of the things that we put forward. We talked about the potential for 3 academic buildings on that site. We also know that there is an opportunity for a rec center or a new athletic complex. The size and scale of that property allows it, and especially with 2 parking garages close by, you can service that need. And also, this site works very well as open space for athletic fields, if that in fact is a direction that the board would want to take. So there are a number of different opportunities. We have shown a fast-pitch women's softball field here, but you could also put a soccer field in there. It could be just one big, large green space if you so desire. But again, these are options and opportunities that you can look at as a board going forward. And again, from a priority and a programming standpoint, you don't know what 25, 30, 40 years are going to bring as you go forward. But having these options, on the table to think about and talk about become very important. And then, of course, there's individual sites. I think this is the intersection of River and Northwest Boulevard. Obviously, there's an opportunity for some housing. This is more conventional with parking underneath, plus some additional surface parking. I tend to think of this as a good plan, but it doesn't really beat a good mixed-use development. So I think there are really some interesting opportunities, especially with the BLM parcel that would have to be kind of integrated in this in order to make this happen. But I think those discussions about how you partner, how you go into the future at the campus fringe become very important to the formulation of a final plan. As I said earlier, we are moving forward with some construction to kind of reclaim the mill site at your direction. We have taken these green ribbons and extended them around on the north side of College. This area is all being irrigated and seeded. It's been regraded to make the transition grades up to the Centennial Trail a little softer. And then we're also getting this parking lot built right now. And then, of course, public art. And I won't dwell too much on that because you were all there today for the celebration, and what a wonderful thing it is to have that aspect blended into the campus. And so that leads us to a discussion from the perspective of these gentlemen. They talked about districts and the need for developing specific areas on campus. Obviously, if you look at this drawing, it's upside down because of the way we were working on it on the table. But we began to talk about where certain things might happen on campus, weaving this green space component in and through and throughout. Again, I'll just refer you back to this ideal schematic that talks about how functions would relate to each other, and then take that and apply it to what we see on your campus today. And what you find is you're actually in pretty good shape in the way the campus has grown and developed, and with administration, library, and student union, kind of relating that to the core. You have perimeter parking or parking at the edges. You have the various academic pieces, whether they be PTE or hard academics that revolve around. And then you have sort of this green space thing that's working its way through. And then as we expand upward, into the north, that sort of takes on the same form again. But as they looked at this, they said, you know, residential probably isn't something we would have put where it is today, because it's probably better at the perimeter of the campus. But that doesn't mean that as a district inside the campus now, that it doesn't work. And so they've talked a lot about perhaps expanding and creating a residential district maybe on the south side of River and linking back down to the current dorms. Again, something that needs to be talked about and explored some more. The brown areas, of course, are neighborhood residential. PUB is public space as we know it. And then we have, of course, the mixed-use opportunities along Northwest Boulevard. So you can begin to see how, from a planning standpoint and a development standpoint, looking at models that are recognized nationally, you're really in pretty good shape going forward. But this notion of the green space, I think, intrigued them, and they were very excited about that. They haven't seen anything like this where a campus is located both on a river and a lake at the same time, and they felt like this linkage was very important in terms of creating that central campus core and maybe moving some of the parking back out or some of the access back out, making the campus more walkable. And certainly I know there's been a lot of discussion about that. Do we have enough parking? Do we have a parking problem? And I always hear like, well, we don't have a parking problem, we have a walking problem, and I won't get into that other than to say that, you know, the more you can orient your campuses to the pedestrian and cyclist, the better you are. And it tends to make, I think, build on everything you're trying to do in terms of making it a more pleasant place to go to school, live, learn, and all those campus activities. So in closing, I'll just say that both Todd and James were really amazed at the campus setting. They talked a lot about the potential, but what you see in terms of these lines on this aerial photo are representative of the original contours that the fort found. And so it's very interesting when I looked at this as a landscape architect, because sometimes I like to go through and look at geomorphology and how that informs design. We had a central high spot here, low spots. So we had a series of islands when the water came up. And this was the tribe's gathering place. And so I'm looking at this saying to myself, this central open space that we've started to develop moving forward actually had its roots way back into what was happening before we got here. And so to me, that's very interesting in terms of how that informs the planning process, how that informs the final design for a campus. And so with that, I'll just take it one step further in terms of the facilities that we did some hard lines, took a look at, you might say, where would we might be headed with this in terms of the campus. Just to orient you, this is River Avenue. This is the lower part of the campus. This is the library. This is the dormitory. This is the Meyer Health Science Building. So we're looking at maybe creating this residential district, maybe more academics up here, parking garages, and then special facilities. Okay? And so we just began to kind of look at how that would work, how the buildings might relate to each other, the spaces that were formed, and it kind of gives you then an idea of 75 to 80 years out what we might be looking at. And so I think the intent tonight is just to give you this vision as it relates to those white paper facilities. And in the future, it's not to say this ought to go here, this ought to go there in terms of specific functions, but I think this gives you a flavor of how the campus will grow and develop in the future. And certainly as we look at mixed-use projects along Northwest Boulevard, perhaps taking buildings and forming spaces that relate to this campus green space. I think there was even a suggestion that when we build this parking garage that we do a mixed-use parking garage and actually have some different uses that go with it. The notion was that we're paying for this big honking structure. We ought to be able to hang some things off the front side of it that actually benefit the campus. And so it was a very, very interesting discussion about that. So with that, if you have questions, certainly we would be happy to answer them. I know you've got a full agenda tonight, but we'll just close with the last look at the campus and ask you to think about that next 75 years and what that means for, you know, all that we want to do going forward. So, thank you.
Questions for John or Kevin? Anybody have any questions?
Well, just
Thank
a comment that, what a great way to pull it all together for us. Some of us have been here from the beginning, and to pull it all together like you did was very informative. Takes us back to a lot of conversations. And really interesting what you've prepared for us, and certainly we know now that the possibilities that are there, and that's what's so important. So thank you for your good work.
Kevin, you want to have some closing thoughts?
Just one of the thoughts I would share with you, and this is kind of stating the obvious, but through the course of working on these projects in different facets, from the Mayor's Institute to the collaborative education pre-design process to the white paper opportunity, each one of the groups that we worked with looked at us and said, "Do you know how special this is?" And we went, "Yeah." But you see, they don't see this all the time. They work in urban settings. And so what John was referring to for a campus to be fronted by a lake and a river was very unique. So they were excited, very excited to see the possibilities here. So it's a great asset. It's a great asset to the students that come here. It's a great asset to the community. And we certainly wish you the best as you move forward and think about where do we go from here? How do we look to the future? So best to you.
Any other comments or questions for John or Kevin? Thank you, guys. It was a great walk down memory lane here. Sometimes I felt like it's been 75 years getting to this point.
2 more weeks, Mick.
So, it's been a lot of meetings, I'll tell you that. So thank you for all your effort, and thank you for your insight on the future.
Can we get a copy of that? Can we get a
John,
copy of
is there possible to get a copy of the presentation?
I've got a copy of it. I've got a copy of it.
Oh, you're,
This is a little different, I think, than what the president has. Not much. We have a few more labels, but it's and a few more slides, but it's on this computer, so feel free to use that.
Joel will get us a copy.
It ought to go into our stack of planning things as we go ahead.
Okay, moving on along to constituent reports. ASNEC. Julie?
Good evening, Dr. Dunlap, Chairman, trustees, and guests. Thank you for having time for ASNIC here. Since our last meeting, we have had some exciting things happen. Last night was our Board of Trustees Forum, which Senators Benaya Cheevers and Duncan Menzies worked incredibly hard on, and the end result was great. We were impressed with the outcome and what all of the trustee candidates had to say. We felt that this forum was important to the trustee candidates as well to the student body. Also, several members of our board traveled to Eugene, Oregon to attend the ACUI, Associated College Union International Regional Conference. There we learned about other student governments, colleges, and specific programs and ideas that we can take back to our school and improve student life. We are in the process of completing 2 grant proposals to the foundation. One is for an art piece in the sub that represents NIC's mission statement, and one for outdoor chess tables to add life and community gathering places outdoors. I hope to tell you more about these projects in the future. Many of us participated in the 4th annual Day of Service. Along with 74 other NIC students, staff, and faculty, we completed 7 community projects, including making and donating 60 blankets to the Union Gospel Mission and St. Vincent de Paul, beach cleanup, community gardens, Post Falls Park District, and the Humane Society. As you know, ASNIC has committed to Go Green efforts over the last 5 years. In 2009, we implemented a recycling program on campus and have been maintaining it since then. Student workers have maintained the bins by emptying them, sorting the bins, and bringing the recyclables to Bluebird Recycling in the industrial park. There have been 25 trips of recycling yielding 7,210 pounds of aluminum, approximately 4,800 gallons of plastic, and 4,500 pounds of paper. Since our last meeting, Bill McLiver and Matt Sebi presented the college's recycling program to us at a workshop. We are in the process of transitioning our program to the college. Tomorrow, we are sponsoring a game day project to help support the volleyball team. We are looking forward to being a part of the NIC at Sandpoint Grand Opening. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Julie? Yes.
Mostly a thank you on behalf of the trustees for the forum they put on. It was certainly helpful. Well done. Good a chance for you to see how to make these things happen, and for us as trustees to continue to champion the college. Well done.
Ken?
Actually, I was here for the forum last night, and I noticed the nice dais that you had. Everybody was up high.
Oh, no.
And I wondered why we don't have that.
We need ASNIC to put on these.
Yes. Nice job.
Put Asnick in charge. Any other questions for Joey?
Mr. Chair, I did have one. First of all, your report was very informative, and we're so proud of our students and all the community service that you do in our community. But I know that you have some more coming up, and so I was curious, maybe you'll report next month. I know you have a wonderful holiday program, and I've wondered if you've started on that already.
For St. Asnic?
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Okay, well, it's only October.
All right.
Thank you.
I did have one question. A couple, maybe it was the first meeting, we had a little discussion about, or there was a comment made about the rec center being brought back up again. Where does your board stand on the rec center concept?
We are still looking at more information and trying to go on more foundations of what we want to do with the rec center. So more ideas and what we're thinking about.
So what do you see the outcome? Are you gonna have a report to us sometime in the future, or?
Yes,
is it
we will.
just investigative?
We will have a report for you in the future.
Very good. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Yes, Judy?
Following up on the forum, I know that it was filmed, taped last night to therefore be run on Channel 19, which is the Coeur d'Alene outlet, and I think also Post Falls. And of course, now we're talking to the choir because whoever's seeing this will have access to it. How are we doing on telling the public about the forum and the fact that it's also available, I think, on YouTube? But again, telling people who are watching on TV doesn't tell the folks we need to reach. How are we doing with getting that word out?
Mark, you look like you're ready to answer that one.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're doing quite well. We have publicized it through all of our normal channels, both traditional and non-traditional. It's gone out over social media. We've sent out the releases. Sent a note to each of you later this afternoon that says, and just for the record, for those who might be watching, Sunday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday and Friday at high noon, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday of next week at 12 midnight, for those of us who like to stay up a little late.
Good times.
For those who can't sleep.
Any other questions for Julie? Thank you very much. Oh, you just got more information sent to you, so.
Oh, thank you. And November 23rd, we will have ASNIC will have a meet and greet with the trustees at 5 p.m.
November 23rd.
Here it says 28.
28th.
8, no, that's right.
Just so we all come at the right time. So
Yes.
on the calendar.
I think the 23rd is Thanksgiving. Anyway,
Good.
thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you.
Good report. Next up, Staff Assembly, Gary Stark.
Good evening, Chairman Mick, trustees Mark Lyons and Dr. Dunlop. My staff assembly reports from October 11th. We had it out at workforce training in Post Falls. Karen Ruppel came to it, and she actually gave us an update on the accreditation process. It was really informative. It actually made us really think about what we do here at work. I mean, she kept giving us these questions that we had to answer, and we actually have to send that to our staff to have them answer it. And the main theme is, the 3 core themes is student success, educational excellence, and community engagement. She's branding that into our brain, so we're going to continue to follow that. Mark Browning came out. He also presented the economic impact study. The numbers that he was telling us, I don't know who came up with that plan, but it just really opens up your eyes of what North Idaho College really does have an impact on this community. And whoever did do that, Mark, if it was you or Joe, good job on that for sure. I gotta make it kind of short and sweet, but I do want to also mention again the recycling thing. Bill McKelver and Matt Sebi really went above and beyond to get that thing going. Students started it. These guys have got with Steve Roberg of Waste Management. They're expecting a $30,000 savings, and we all have to work on it. I'll take a can of soup at lunch and I'll heat it up, And I take that can and I go to throw it in the garbage can, and Bill says, hey, that's recyclable. It's single stream recycling. So we all have to remind each other to do that, because I'm in the habit of throwing it away, and we can save a lot of money just by throwing it in that recycle thing. Also, with staff assembly, we do shout outs. It's for someone that's gone above and beyond, and you can recognize them at the staff assembly meeting. So there was 2 of them. Sometimes we have 8, but there was 2 of them this time. And it was Adam Mortensen, for him, the work that he did to move the Pond Ray Center to the Sandpoint Center. I kind of just laid it on him. He went up there and got it done. So there was a shout out to him, and also Kelly Hopkins, who's one of our security folks. And the HR department said, hey, Kelly comes over and just makes our day. We want to do a shout out for her. So that was pretty cool. And they made some kind of a comment of a taser for Susie for Christmas, but that's not going to happen. So. But our constituent meeting yesterday, we all decided that we would like to do a shout out for the Board of Trustees for the work that you guys have done. And so that's a shout out for the good work that you guys do, and making sure that we make those student success, educational excellence, and community engagement what we work for every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary.
Any questions?
Any questions for Gary? Thank you very much.
All right.
Faculty Assembly, Kathy O'Brien.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Board Chair, President, and honored guests. Last week was our midterm week, so yeah, we're halfway through the semester. And so faculty were busy torturing students with midterm exams and getting those midterm grades posted. And I know those are really helpful for the students to know exactly where they stand right now, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes they need to work a little bit harder. So next week's advising day. So we never seem to ever just slow down. Next week we'll be meeting with our thousands of students and helping them get ready for next semester. So on Tuesday, October 30th, we don't have classes during the day, and faculty members meet with those students on either an individual basis, and sometimes faculty do group advising. So students, go see your advisor. It's important. Right after that, students will be registering. I had an opportunity to put together some data, and one of the things we talked about was, people say, what do you do for a living? I say, I teach, but sometimes it's a little misleading, because people think, oh, you just go to the classroom and you talk to students about whatever you talked about. But there's so much more to that. And part of that is community and campus involvement. And our faculty, we have about 168 full-time faculty members. And I just asked them, what are you doing on campus? Just campus. And sorted it, filtered it using my magic of Excel. And our 168 full-time faculty members are involved in over 100 unique service activities. And that's just on campus. That doesn't count all of the things our faculty do off campus. So, when we talk about shared governance, when we talk about campus involvement, I know that those 168 faculty members are very, very much involved. And that doesn't even count all the part-time people that work very hard to keep our campus going. So thank you for the opportunities to do that. Next month agenda, we have Curly coming to visit us, and he's not here anymore, but we look forward to having Curly, the Veterans Advisor, talk to faculty about what we can best do to help those veterans. Really excited about that. And then in February, we've been asked to, a representative from Complete College, Idaho, will be attending our meeting, our February meeting, and updating us on what that initiative is and how it can affect us. I want to extend my thanks to the board as well. Thank you, Gary, for saying that. We really appreciate all of your hard work. And Board Trustee Visselmeyer, we will miss you. And thank you very much for all the hard work you've done. And we know that next time we meet, it won't be the same group. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the faculty really appreciate what you do for us. We have a shout out to Mike Horswell, our very own faculty member, and the artwork that he created for the beautiful roundabout. And last but certainly not least, well, two things. One thing, thanks to ASNIC for the board forum. I was able to watch it today on YouTube because I was not able to be here last night, so thank you so much. That is so helpful, and I would encourage everybody to watch that and vote wisely. I was going to say vote early and often, but I don't think that works very well. And then certainly not last but not least, but thank you to Andy Finney because he worked so hard, not only getting these meetings recorded, but also having that just right up and going after last night. And for me, being able to watch that this afternoon was just so helpful and so informative. So thanks, Andy. I really appreciate it. And with that, I will entertain any questions.
Questions for Kathy?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I don't know that Kathy will be able to answer, but she kind of brought up a topic that we always like to revisit, and that is our ratio of full-time faculty to part-time. And so my question's really probably more aimed at President Dunlap. We like to keep a certain ratio, and we certainly like to focus on more full-time than part-time. And can you kind of give me a rundown on what those numbers are and if we're meeting our goals?
Yes, the goal is 70% full-time tenured faculty and 30% adjunct. We are slightly below that, and we are probably about 65% full-time and 35% adjunct, roughly. So we're very close to that number. And that ratio of full-time faculty is probably one of the highest of any college in the country. Most colleges are closer to 50-50, and many junior colleges that don't have career and technical programs are more on the order of 30% full-time and 70% adjunct. So the students at this college and the community should feel very proud of the fact that we do have so many full-time tenured faculty, and that makes a difference. And there's been a commitment to that, and we are very close to that goal.
Fantastic, thank you.
Any other questions for Kathy O'Brien? Thank you, Kathy. Andy, you got your tie on for politic, and you got a shout out there. That's good. Last but not least, Senate with Audrey Byrne.
Byrne identity. That's what I tell my students.
It's not Jason, though.
No, I'm not married to Jason. Well, thank you, Chair Arman, members of the board, President Dunlap. My name is Audrey Byrne, and not only do I teach communication studies here at NIC, but I'm also vice chair of College Senate, and I'm standing in tonight for John Totten, who's our chair, to report to you what happened at our October meeting. And I am very happy to share with you that the first reading was passed for the reduction in force policy and procedure. It's been an ongoing process, and those documents have been now set forth to faculty assembly and staff assembly in hopes to discuss again for a second reading approval. And should that happen, then they'll be put forth to President Dunlap and then on to you, the Board of Trustees. And I just want to say that this really is a prime example of shared governance at its best, because we get the opportunity to include dialogue from different facets of the campus, from staff, faculty, and students. And it's very important as we discuss topics in regards to this campus. And with that being said, that's all I have to report.
Questions or comments for Audrey?
Good work.
I will make a comment. I'm so happy to hear that because that's been a issue that I've been pushing for a lot of years. So thank you for shepherding it through, and I look forward to the final product coming to us.
Yes, definitely. We did a little cheer at the end of the meeting.
Woo-hoo! We'll cheer when we get it here, so
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Vice President reports. First up, Ron Dorn.
Board Chair, board members, President Dunlap, good evening again for the second time. I have what I hope is a short report, but I want to recognize three people in the division, Gary Stark, Bill McElver, who are currently in the University of Washington Facilities Management certification program. And I placed emphasis on this since I've been here because of the presentations we've had tonight and where this college is headed relative to either building new facilities, remodeling facilities, and looking at the future relative to facilities. It's a 10-month program that focuses on techniques for strategic planning, real estate and financial planning, facilities relocation, project management, team management, strategies, and disaster planning. So it's a pretty intensive program that these folks are involved with. This program will allow Gary and Bill to combine their real-world experience with heightened knowledge of theoretical expertise. Is that right, Gary? Okay. The curriculum also encompasses a mentor program. Gary is grateful to have John Ingalls, Deputy City Administrator for the City of Coeur d'Alene, as his mentor. And Gary says he's already learned the value of working with a team and building relationships with the public from his mentor. Bill has the good fortune to have Dave Teeter of Teeter Consulting as his mentor, who has 27 years experience in the public school sector facilities management. And Bill is looking forward to learning quite a bit from Dave. Gary and Bill are following the footsteps of another NIC employee who has already received her MBA, NIC Controller Sarah Garcia. So I think we're really heading in the right direction, getting our folks trained up to deal with where you as a board are taking this college in the future. And I just want to congratulate them for the work they're doing, the effort and the time they're spending on this. A lot of time on their own to make this happen and be successful in this course. I want to, again, thank them and let you know what some of our employees are up to. Questions?
Thank you, Ron. Questions for Ron? Appreciate it. Thank you. Vice President of Instruction, Lita Burns.
Board Chair Arman, members of the board, President Dunlap. I think Kathy and I are going to have to start collaborating before we give our reports, because she always seems to steal my thunder just a little bit. So either that, I'm going to have to ask for a rearrangement of the agenda schedule. I too was going to comment on the fact of what time of year it is. You know, at the first meeting, I commented on the excitement and that thrill that was in the air because it was the beginning of school. And we definitely have a sense of excitement this time of year too. It's a little different flavor, but you know it's midterms, and you can see it on the students' faces and the dark circles underneath the faculty's eyes and that sort of thing. But we are at midterm, and it seems to have just flown by. But it's always a good thing. So the midterm grades were submitted this week. And I just wanted to comment on one of the programs which I think likely led to a positive impact on the midterm grades themselves, and that is our peer tutoring program. We currently have 42 individuals providing tutoring to 472 students. And tutoring is also being provided at the outreach centers in Sandpoint and in Bonners Ferry. This program is significant in terms of promoting student success here at NIC. In addition to all the classroom instruction activity going on, there are many other activities related to instruction, and I just want to highlight a few of those for you this evening. You know, as a part of our ongoing assessment process, instructional programs are required to complete a program review every 5 years. The programs do a self-assessment and then invite external reviewers to campus to review the programs, provide feedback, and offer recommendations. The external reviewers are often educators from other colleges or universities who either teach or administer in like programs to the program that is being reviewed. Or also, the external interviewers come from local businesses and industries that are associated with the programs being reviewed. These program reviews provide vital information which leads to improved program outcomes. So today, the computer-aided drafting program was reviewed, and tomorrow we'll have a music program review being conducted. In addition, 12 other programs are scheduled to undergo program review this spring. As you also know, we have a number of accredited programs within the college, and the medical assistant program is one of our newer health professions programs, and they will have a site visit on November 1st and November 2nd as a part of the evaluation process for consideration of initial accreditation. Taking you back a couple of years, you may recall that the PTE division received a Grow Green Grant in July of 2010. This was a $196,000 grant that was awarded to diesel and maintenance mechanic millwright programs to purchase equipment to support education and training in green technology. These programs were so successful in meeting the grant requirements that they were eligible to apply for additional funding. The Department of Labor has awarded them additional funding, and to date, the programs have received $270,780. So a tremendous additional award beyond the award they initially received. So I think that's very remarkable. Our mathematics instructors are putting forth the finishing touches on the 31st annual math contest, and that is scheduled for November 7th right here in the Lake Coeur d'Alene room. They hope to continue the tradition of Division I schools and Division II schools competing for prizes and bragging rights in mathematics. This year they're going to add what they're calling somewhat of a Jeopardy round to the team competition of this math competition. And that's going to prove to be a lot of fun both to watch and for the students to participate in. This competition is open to the public, so if any of you are free on November 7th between 9 o'clock and about 1 o'clock, we invite you to come join in that activity. Specifically, the Jeopardy round will occur around 11 o'clock, so if you want to get on that action, be here at 11. And then lastly, I'd like to share with you just a few items which I believe support the NIC value of educational excellence. Ginger Winkler, who is the NIC Dual Credit Coordinator, Gail Ballard, Education Faculty, and Molly Bouchard, English faculty, were selected to present at the National Dual Credit Conference. They will be presenting a program model developed by NIC to prepare and mentor high school instructors to teach dual credit courses. The goal of the program they created was to maintain the rigor of college-level courses being taught in the high schools and to provide support for high school instructors. This conference will occur next week in Seattle. And then last spring, Sharon Tomlinson, nursing faculty, and I were selected to present at the annual convention of the National Organization of Associate Degree Nursing. We are presenting a community-based gerontology experience we developed in partnership with Area Agency on Aging and the Heritage Place. And that convention will occur November 9th through 11th. With that, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Lita. Any questions for Lita?
Thank you.
You guys were not timing her. Are you letting her off easy? Hey, guys. Mark Browning.
They're all timing now, let me tell you.
That's what I was wondering.
See them bust out the watches over there, so. We got a little interactive exercise for you tonight, and I would just like you to, Andy, are all their mics open? When I say top companies, top brands, just give me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Nike.
Nike?
General Motors.
General Motors.
Pepsi-Cola.
Pepsi-Cola, good.
I'm still thinking. I don't do well under pressure. I was going to say
Ford.
something in cosmetics.
Ford. How about you, Barrister Lyons? What comes to mind?
Apple.
Apple. Very good. Anybody else?
CoverGirl. There you go.
Cover. So I want to talk a little bit about branding tonight. We did a little, some branding work, and we asked around the office, we asked around campus, we went out on our Facebook page and asked all of our many followers who follow the college, what are the top brands? Some of those came up. Apple came up. Southwest Airlines came up, so to speak. Levi's. Anybody ever wear a pair of Levi's? We'd like to wear Levi's to the board meetings, but we'll work on that. General Motors came up. Somebody mentioned that. Was that
Ken?
Ken mentioned General Motors. Sorry, Ron. Coca-Cola came up a lot. Pepsi didn't. To my dismay, Mountain Dew didn't come up at all. Amazon, and we know that President Dunlap's your son works for Amazon. Is that right? Yeah. So one of the big brands that came up, and one that we ironically used in this little exercise, was Facebook. If you go on to the internet and you start to look for lists of the top 20 brands, both regionally, nationally, and globally, many of those names will all come up. There'll be some others that come up. Mercedes-Benz comes up and some of the more international names. But they're interesting that we have identifications of what comes with branding. And so when you think of these companies, what are the types of traits that these companies have? What are their products embody? Mick, when I say, well, which one did you gave me Apple.
No, I said Nike.
Nike. I'm sorry, I didn't put Nike. I'm an old Adidas guy, but
Just do it.
just do it. What do you think of when you think of Nike?
Fast.
Fast? Yeah. What do you think of when you think of Ford, Joe? What do you think of?
Pickup truck.
Pickup truck. Reliable, consistent, maybe successful. You know, these are some of the traits that we're looking for, that these brands, whatever we think of with these products, and when we think of an iPad, we think of something that has value. We think of it, that we can trust it with our information, that it's consistent. These things excel in performance. The Nike shoe that Mick wears during his Ironman competitions, you know, they help him because they're a quality product and these companies are engaged. These are all the traits that you're looking for in a very strong brand. Now, do these traits come up when I show you the next brand? I want you to think of tonight, this is what we think of in our marketing efforts and community relations and governmental relations. We're thinking of branding, and we think of North Idaho College as a brand. Everything we do, whether it's a trustee meeting, our interaction with the community, students primarily, when we're out, when LEAD is presenting at a conference, we're looking at people who excel, who are engaged in their fields. And these are all the types of traits that we want people to associate with us as a brand. So when we say the brand of North Idaho College, we want people to think about we're reliable, we consistently deliver value, we're engaged with the people that we serve. Those are the types of things that we're doing. One of the big ways that we do it is through all of our athletic brands. Everything we do here at the college is a brand. ASNIC, working on all the different things that they work on, that's part of our brand. You know, Governor Otter has a saying that he likes to say in his cabinet meetings, we're riding for the brand, and the brand is the state of Idaho. Well, here at North Idaho College, we ride for the brand, and it's Cecil. That's our brand. That's what we do. So I want you to think about branding in how we approach everything that we do. I know Ron's over there timing me, so I always get a chance to brag on my staff, but you want to talk about branding. We were in Salem, most of us, last week, and the NCMPR is the National Council for Marketing and Public Relations. It's specifically for two-year schools, and Region 7 is kind of that green area in that it also includes Saskatchewan into Canada, so the light kind of that, I want to say lima bean green. It's a huge geographic area. Our folks last week took home the gold medal. North Idaho College won first place in our social media category. Now keep in mind, we're competing against Washington and Oregon, so Seattle, Tacoma. President Dunlop, how many community colleges in Washington?
34.
34, and in Oregon there's another
17.
17, right there. All through Western Canada, Northwest Territories, the Yukon, Alaska, right here. These folks, pictured along the bottom there that I chopped off most of their heads, they do the work. Not only did they bring home the gold, but they got a silver and bronze as well. We got a bronze award for media engagement and media relations, and we got a silver award. Heather Butler, who was our award winner this month with the Numerica Credit Union being recognized for her efforts. Heather, one of the posters that she designed for the Jazz Festival, won an award out of all those folks. And it was a lot of fun to be right there in Salem, Oregon, where Portland thought they were sweeping everything, and we took the big award of the night. So it was awfully nice. We had a good time. So, left to right, Stacy Hudson, who is our director for communications and marketing. Stacy really is in charge of the day-to-day operations. Tom Green handles the bulk of our media relations. Nick Grenier is our marketing director. The lovely lady in green is Heather Butler, our very talented graphic artist. Lynn Hill, who supports all the office through the administration functions. She also takes care of the PTK fraternity functions there on campus here.
Then we have Chris Pfeiffer, who is responsible for all of the web design and maintenance. The next gal over is Mindy Patterson, who I would be absolutely lost without Mindy. And Mindy was out elk hunting today, so I'm glad that somebody else was in her sights today and not me. And then Melissa Mawini is our programmer. She writes all the programming code. So that's our folks that make these things happen every day. So just a final note, I would like to thank Trustee Wieselmeyer for his kindness and very graciousness in welcoming me and my family here to the North Idaho College family. So we hope you know that you never leave the family. You're always around. So thank you very much. So Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions if we have any tonight.
Questions for Mark?
I do.
Yes, Ken.
I want to take you down a little different path than you
Sure.
took us. But it does have to do a little bit with the branding. We have talked, I think, in some prior meetings about, and I'm put in mind of this because of Curly's presentation to us, about our efforts to try and make sure that we reach out to veterans. And hearing his report tonight and the excellent work that's being done in terms of creating the facilities here in order to assist veterans. I guess I want to, if you could help us with what are we doing now still to reach out and market ourselves to veterans so that they know that we have not only the good excellent educational facilities, but also these assistance facilities. Because as I recall, one of the things that brought this to our attention some time ago was the for-profits were marketing to some of the veterans and not really coming through with good educational programs, and certainly not providing the kinds of assistance that we heard about from Curly tonight. Can you comment on that a little bit?
You bet, absolutely, Chairman and Trustee Howard. Nick Grenier, third in from the left, is our marketing coordinator. Nick is working very closely with Curly, and they're tailoring programs where they're going out and they're directly through direct marketing efforts, working with a lot of the veterans groups to help contact those folks directly to try to show them, look, here's the value that your military education dollars will get you here at North Idaho College. They've chosen to go on a more direct route right now because in terms of cost, to send it out to everybody wide, it certainly doesn't hurt, but we have limited dollars outlaid for those programs, and so we're starting on a micro focus first, and then we'll build out from there. But they've been doing some very direct market efforts with the different branches in the service to try to get those folks in here. So, and working with Curly, who's very good about, these are the types of things these are what the terms and the things that will have value and understanding to a veteran that we're not aware of. So Curly's been very helpful there.
Thank you. Questions? Speaking of marketing and branding, I noticed the ASNIC logo on Julie's coat there. I like that.
She's riding for the brand. So we appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark. Graydon, you're next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, President Dunlap, and other guests, Ron Dorn had informed me that he had donated his extra time to me unless Mark used it up, and unfortunately now mine's even less because Mark went into my time as well. So I'll have to be as brief as I can. This has been a busy month, as it is for everybody here at NIC. It's been a busy month for student services. It's hard to believe, as you heard said tonight, we're past midterm, and now we're preparing for the next semester. Registration is just around the corner, so we'll be restarting all those processes again. I want to give you a little bit of a sense of some of our priorities this last month. Our staff spent a lot of time developing programmatic priorities toward the educational master plan that you're familiar with. Dr. Dunlap has been leading us toward that end, and we did some great work, I think, contributing to that process where student services fits into that piece. Included in ours was taking priorities from ASNIC as well. They had met and talked about what their priorities were on our campus, and we included those as a part of the plan that's coming forward to the administration and the board as well. Last week, I had the good opportunity to present at the State Board of Education meeting in Lewiston. In fact, what the topic was that all colleges and universities were asked to present on was our progress toward the Complete College Idaho initiatives. And I was really proud of what NIC has done, not only toward that end, but how well it's fitting into the strategic plan and the accreditation process. I think the folks here have done such a good job melding all of those together, so we're going down the same roads in all regards that way. Speaking of Complete College Idaho, there's a statewide conference that's taking place next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Student Services and Instruction have a number of folks that will be down there for that. On Thursday, the Student Services team is visiting College of Western Idaho in the morning too. They've developed recently a one-stop shop in the new Sam's Club building that they acquired, and we're anxious to see that and meet with our colleagues there next Thursday. On other ends, our financial aid, along with instruction and business office and others, have been addressing. We've had an issue with student bad debt here. Those students who have been receiving loans or going to school and not been able to pay that back, and we're trying to address those issues and come up with some solutions, and I'm pleased at the progress we're making there. In academic services, our folks are working very hard toward providing interventions, intrusive advising, as I like to call it, for those students that might face academic probation or satisfactory academic progress problems, those students who are struggling, and making sure that we're not passively telling them that they need to do better, but really quite intentionally and intrusively telling them that we've got support services here, you need to participate in those, and we want to help you be successful. And I'm really pleased at the work that's being done in that area. Auxiliary Services has been addressing the need for some assistance in conferencing and event scheduling here on campus. Lanny and his crew has been working toward that end. So we have a coordinated effort about the use of our facilities here on campus and supporting the college and the community in that regard. I would tell you also that I have the opportunity every month as a part, one of the goals of Complete College Idaho, as you know, is leveraging partnerships. And one of the places that we're trying to do that is I have the opportunity each month to attend the superintendent's meeting for this region and the principals meeting for this region. I know Mark is joining me, and Lita and Joe and others will be coming as well. But it gives us a great chance to be at the same table with our partners in the K through 12 portion, and we're going to find that that's going to be real beneficial to all of us. I just attended tonight at 4 o'clock a PTK meeting. We had over 600 students who qualified by having a 3.5 GPA or above to become members of Phi Theta Kappa. And that was an outstanding number, and there was an event that PTK hosted. And I listened to the presentations by the officers and then had a chance to meet many of the students, and an outstanding group and ones that you would be so proud of what they're doing. It's bittersweet to announce to you that Lanny Stein, if you hadn't heard this, Lanny Stein has announced his retirement in May this year. Lanny's been serving the college for a long, long time as Director of Auxiliary Services, and we're thrilled for Lanny and want to congratulate him on his upcoming retirement, but certainly will miss his leadership and service to this campus over the years. And I wanted to make sure, with his permission, that I informed you of that. And lastly, I've mentioned to you a couple times that I sold my house, and I was now spending my money in Coeur d'Alene. And I want to let you know, as of about 2 weeks ago, for the first time in probably 40 years, I was debt-free because I had sold my house and I was only renting here, and I paid off all my bills. As of tonight, I incurred more debt than I've ever had any time in my life. But fortunately, all that debt is due in Kootenai County, and part of that will go to support North Idaho College, as I've acquired a 30-year mortgage. My wife is coming tomorrow. She's not seen the home that we're purchasing. She's seen lots of pictures. I know you think that's a dangerous, and it is. I've asked Joe right away to be able to write me a 30-year contract, and I hope he'll be bringing that to your attention. Be really glad to address any questions you might have for Student Services.
Any questions for Graydon? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got one comment. Is your wife going to get a contract here as well?
Oh, please.
Before I move on to our next speaker, President Joe Dunlap, I would like to just recognize all the other ASNC officers that are here tonight. You look very professional. Thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to see the students here representing ASNIC. It's great for you to be here and following through the meeting, so thank you. With that, Joe.
Mr. Chair, trustees, and colleagues, I've offered up to Graydon that if his wife doesn't like the new home, he can rent the basement in my house.
And trade.
You know, as I look around this room and you hear the reports rendered by faculty and staff, and you listen to the report by John Mueller and Kevin Jeske, I have to be the most blessed president in the community college system in this country. I mean, a beautiful campus and an absolutely fabulous team that is working very, very hard. Now, one of the things that was briefly mentioned was this concept of an educational master plan. And if you look at the previous board presentations related to economic impact that the college has, tonight Graydon's going to talk about our fall enrollment and trends, and then the report by Kevin Jeske and John Mueller. Those are all components that will begin to make up this master plan. And the intent is to deliver you a draft report at the next meeting, and then finalize that hopefully at the following meeting after that. That will lay out a blueprint for this college over the next several years that will prioritize new programs, facilities, articulate educational trends, look at delivery systems, and provide that guidance for the staff and us so that we can stay the course and meet the objectives that we're trying to achieve. So I am very pleased with the progress that this team is making towards that. Shannon Goodrich is pulling all that information together, and it will incorporate an enormous amount of data, and our recommendations will be a prioritized list for you to discuss and then decide what direction you'd like us to go. Now, I know Ron Wieselmeyer will be here next meeting, but that will be his last meeting before that position changes to a new trustee. And I want to personally thank Ron Wieselmeyer, publicly thank him as well for his 6 years of service to this college. I've only known him for a 3-month period of time, and it has been my pleasure to work with and for him. And I know he has been an outstanding board member. And on November 9th at 1:30 in the Driftwood Bay room downstairs, there will be a reception for Trustee Wieselmeyer, and I would encourage and invite everyone to attend and thank him for his service. So thank you, Ron. I'd also like to thank our students for putting on the forum last night for the trustee candidates. You did an absolutely superb job. You kept more control of that room than the moderators did in the presidential debates. And so it was very, very impressive that it was so well organized. And so, Julie, thank you, and thank the students and your staff for doing that. It was very well done. Also, congratulations to the marketing department. Mark mentioned the awards that they had won. That's absolutely fabulous when you consider the competition that they were facing. So good job, Mark. And also, he mentioned Heather and her award. Well, this past month, she was also the Sterling Silver Award winner for the Employee of the Month. And so, again, congratulations to your team. I had the great pleasure today to be invited into one of the classrooms, and I attended the American Indian Studies course. And you'll be proud to know that I learned how to play the Indian stick game. And so I'm getting very proficient at that. But that was a real pleasure to be invited into the faculty members' classroom and to be able to see our faculty in operation. And that's really, quite frankly, the first opportunity I've had since I've been here. And that's one of the great pleasures in being on an educational campus, is to be able to sit in on a classroom and see the learning experience take place. One of our goals over the course of this year is to look at, evaluate, and modify or establish standardized practices. And that's a very difficult situation in many instances, and I will give you some examples. One has been, for example, the RIF policy that was mentioned earlier this evening, and we are bringing closure to that, and within a very short period of time we'll be able to bring that to the board for discussion, modification, and or approval. Another example was that when I applied for this job, one of the questions I asked was, how do divisional chairs get selected? Now, I'm not picking on divisional chairs. This is just an example of policies and procedures that need to be reviewed. And the answer was, on one hand, that divisional chairs are appointed by administration. On the other hand, I was told that divisional chairs are elected by their peers. So I asked, well, what's the length of term for a divisional chair? And I was told, life. And I said, well, the only office I know of that is for life is a Supreme Court justice, and that's an appointed position. And so I asked, well, what is the process for re-electing or reappointing a divisional chair? And there was none. And then if faculty are not satisfied with the performance of a divisional chair, what's the process for replacing that individual? And there was none there either. So the point being that we have some procedures that need to be put in place. We have other procedures that are not being followed, and some procedures that need to be modified. And so we are going through a rather comprehensive process to review our procedures and take a look at standardizing those across campus. Kathy O'Brien and her group has taken on a number of those responsibilities, including the committee structure on this campus, how individuals are appointed to committees, what the charges are for committees, the length of a term for the committees, and who those committees report to. So Kathy, thank you for taking on that charge. I know it's a difficult task and at times a contentious task, but we appreciate that very much. Also, I have Jim Perez, who is doing a general review of procedures as well and is working with staff to help us in that process. I want to give you an update on our emergency planning. We've talked a little bit about that in the past. As you know, I've made it a requirement that members of President's Cabinet attend the online training course by FEMA on the incident command structure. And I'm hoping that PC, and I see some puzzled looks over there, is pressing on and getting that accomplished. This next week, we will have an after-action review of the situation that happened on campus a number of weeks ago, so that we can learn from our experiences and get better at what we do. And then in November, based on that after-action review, we will conduct a tabletop exercise with another scenario so that we will continue to improve our preparedness for emergency situations. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to make a presentation to the Permanent Building Fund Advisory Committee, and it was a joint presentation with LCSC and University of Idaho regarding the joint use facility. It was a very well received presentation. What we have asked for is funding over a 2-year period of time to help fund that facility. And we will learn in November, I believe, by the end of November, whether that advisory committee recommends funding to the legislature. The university and college presidents meet once a month now, and have a very ambitious agenda. But one of the items I want you to be aware of is that we have supported the development of a statewide, and for lack of a better term, Regents degree that would be an online degree that would support students throughout the state regardless of how rural they may be. And the degree would be 100% transferable between any educational system or any educational institution in the state. The development of that degree has been delegated to our vice presidents of instruction and provosts, and we will move forward with that. And we think that that is a move in a wonderful direction to provide more standardization and opportunity for students throughout the state of Idaho. Hopefully, by fall of 2013, that degree will be developed. The last thing that I'd like to mention is that the 3 community college presidents, as well as the board chairs, have begun meeting on a regular basis. And this past month, we met, and some of the items that we talked about in terms of standardization were the voluntary framework of accountability, which would allow the community colleges to track students, gather data, and report in a common system. We also talked about developing a consortium between the 3 institutions to deliver dual credit online so that it's standardized, so that we're not competing with one another, and that it provides access throughout the entire state. And I think if we can do that in a cooperative fashion, it will benefit the citizens enormously in the state of Idaho. And then the last item that we discussed is that the Albertson Foundation is looking at funding a project called P-TECH. Now, P-TECH is similar to K-TECH, and Graydon attended that meeting with the Albertsons Foundation on my behalf. And so that is being evaluated right now, but the interesting juxtaposition of that particular program with Proposition 3 that is on the ballot now is that P-TECH creates a charter high school geared specifically towards career and technical education. And Proposition 13 that is on the ballot now, what did I say?
13.
I'm at Proposition 3, thank you, allows for a higher educational institution to establish their own charter high school. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's where we want to go, but I think it's important that you understand the relationship between some of the legislation, some of the funding opportunities that are out there, and some of the direction that education is heading towards in Idaho. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Joe? Ken?
The program, the voluntary framework of accountability that you mentioned a few minutes ago, I know we've talked about this in the past a little bit, but one of my concerns is still, and I guess I'm going to ask you to address this if you can, does that framework that's being evaluated now, does that address the question of how we calculate completion rates and graduation rates for community colleges? Because I know there's a lot of confusion out there, and Complete Idaho and other programs that are now being advanced are based upon some statistics. And as I see those statistics applied to community colleges, which have a wide array of mandates and the kinds of students we teach, and even though we have 4 credit courses, some of them are not anticipated to be completed in the traditional sense. Does your voluntary framework of accountability program that's being evaluated, does it address the need for a definition of completion rates and graduation rates for community colleges?
Absolutely it does. And what that framework does is it tracks cohorts of students as they migrate through a system. And the beauty of it is that it allows students to depart college and come back into the system and be counted along the way, which none of the systems before this have been able to do. In addition, it has metrics that are geared specifically towards career and technical students that relate to certificates, employment, and progression that other programs do not have. There is an implementation manual that has been produced that defines every single benchmark and character within the system, which is precisely what you are asking about. Now, the 3 community colleges, when we've had the discussion about implementation, have agreed that we need one point of contact within the state that will help us implement, so that when we do that, or if we do that, it will be standardized and it will be done in an identical manner at each of the 3 institutions, so that when we do benchmark ourselves or compare data, that it will be accurate and it will be calculated in exactly the same manner.
It just so happens that Joe is that point of contact, by the way.
No, no, I'm not.
I thought you were appointed by the other 2 presidents.
Not for the implementation,
Okay.
but in terms of providing updated information, I
Okay,
think.
so you're just the contact person for update.
Yeah.
I know that Bert and Jerry were definitely assigning you the task.
Okay.
And yet
Just a
other-
follow-up question. Does this voluntary framework of accountability, the way it's being proposed anyway, does it have the kind of flexibility in it that it might account for new teaching vehicles and models that come along? I mean, as I think about maybe the dual credit program, which is designed for a very limited amount of credits, is this voluntary framework of accountability, does it address the way we evaluate that too in terms of graduation and completion?
Yes, in fact, you could look at dual credit students as a cohort of students going through the system. And so absolutely it does.
Other questions? Judy?
A different topic, so let's finish this one.
Well, mine's a different topic too. Go first, please.
I was just thinking as you were giving your report, I don't remember that you had a moment to comment about today's dedication of the art. And I
Yeah.
just think it's another demonstration of partnerships that we should.
Yeah, absolutely. Today, we had the dedication of 3 art sculptures that were funded by the Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission. And they are absolutely beautiful sculptures in the roundabouts in the higher education campus. One of the artists is one of our own faculty that was funded for the project, and that's Michael Horswell. And the interesting piece is that the art captures our historic roots. And when you look at the fact that we are on Coeur d'Alene, originally Coeur d'Alene Indian tribe land, the 3 art pieces incorporate that concept that links the past to the present. And the sculptures are absolutely beautiful. And so if the viewers have not seen that art, I would encourage them to come on campus, take a drive around, and view that. Coeur d'Alene is an absolutely wonderful community in terms of embracing fine art and performing art. And you won't find another community in this country of this size that has these types of programs. And it's a credit to the community, the city of Coeur d'Alene, and now we are a piece of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Dr. Dunlap, you've been so busy in 3 months. You really hit the ground running. But I was just curious about any meetings or conversations with our wonderful foundation, if there are any projects on the horizon, any conversations. What's new with them?
Sure. We have been working quite a bit with the foundation. And one of the major projects we're working on right now is that we've moved into a new facility in Sandpoint for our outreach center, and it allows us the ability to increase our capacity. But the one missing piece up there is having a science wet lab. And so Rael and myself on several occasions have gone to Sandpoint and have met with 2 different groups of individuals. One is a group that represents Communiversity that talks about a continuum of Education in Sandpoint. And the other group is chaired by the former mayor of Sandpoint that wants to provide whatever support they can to us to help us be more successful. And so one of the things I mentioned to them is that without that science wet lab, a student would have to come to campus to complete their AA degree. But if we had that, a student could remain in Sandpoint and complete that degree, and then with our partners move on to a baccalaureate degree. And so we indicated that we needed to raise $100,000 to put in place that wet lab. And so they have embraced that. Rael has developed a campaign, and we are working very hard to raise that $100,000 for the Sandpoint Outreach Center. In addition, this past year, we had, and I think my numbers are correct, 791 students who received $702,297 in scholarship money from the foundation. Now that represents 15% of our student body, which is fairly significant in addition to the number of students who qualify for financial aid. So we've been working very hard with the foundation, and I'm pleased to say that you know, things are moving along very well, and there's some initiatives that the foundation is moving forward with. And maybe if you'd like, Mr. Chair, we can at one of our meetings have Rael come and brief us on what's happening with the foundation.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Well, being as I'm the liaison from the board to the foundation, I always give the foundation a report on what the board's doing. I guess we should give the board a report on what the foundation is doing. Right, Rael? And it's fundraising time.
Yeah.
It's always fundraising time at the foundation. We're always looking for funds. And the fall is a big campaign to try to go out and find donors. And I think a lot of people have probably received little envelopes in the mail saying it's time to do your annual contribution to the foundation. And if you haven't, do let me know, or let Joe know, because we're both on the foundation board, and we have the ability to collect your checks from you. So if anybody would like to donate to the foundation for scholarships, please talk to either one of us, or Rael. Rael, do you have any comments? Thank you. Yes, Judy.
That's a good segue into, on our calendar at least, I don't see here, but I do remember seeing a postcard come in about the scholarship reception that occurs to honor folks who've been recipients of scholarships, and I always find it a very powerful gathering. Can you remind me, is it somewhere here in November?
Yes, it is. November 15th.
No. November 15th, 5 to 7, 5:30 to 7 in this building.
And it's open to anyone who wants to attend?
Supporters, invitees, and students.
This is,
RSVP process so that we can plan accordingly and have food for everyone.
good, because as I say, my experience before has been not only for board members, but as you say, the other invited folk to understand the value of those contributions and what the scholarships provide for students is why we all come to these meetings, right?
Well, and just this past, and to go back to Trustee Wood's question, we also had the annual donors luncheon here last week. And that went very, very well, and it was extremely well attended. Yeah.
Other questions for Joe? Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to business. There was no old business at this point in time, so we're going to move on to new business. Tab 1, first reading, the North Idaho College Head Start Service Plans and Policy Council Bylaws. Beth Ann Fuller.
Thank you, Chair Arman and trustees and President Dunlap for letting me come and do a semi-annual report so I don't have to overwhelm you with too many things at once yearly. I look forward to having you approve our Policy Council bylaws as well as our Community Complaints and Civil Rights Complaint Resolution Procedure, our work plans, and I'm most excited about our annual report for our program year 11-12, and I get to use a clicker, so I'm very excited. The first attachment A would be our policy council bylaws. And other than making them more understandable to our parents that are on our policy council that help the Board of Trustees govern our Head Start program, there was one major change, and that was in membership and meetings, which on that document is on page 2 of 9. And what is proposed here is that because our parents are volunteers that have been elected by each of their different centers to be representatives on our policy council, it was the order of business to have representatives and alternates. And our policy council asked that we consider that all parents that have been elected be representatives and that we eliminate there being a need for any alternates. Alternates were already expected to come to all meetings and be present and follow all business. So that is our big major proposal and change in this document. And along with that was a piece changing some of the wording. We still had a bit of wording that talked about the policy council notebooks and who maintains them and different duties that different officers had. And we made sure that we cleared that up so each of the officers knew exactly what their duties were. And also for our Idaho Head Start Association, which is an association that all 13 Head Start programs in Idaho belong to, that we made sure that we mentioned the Idaho Head Start Association and that we make sure that a parent from our program and an alternate in that case do represent us at our member meeting in January of the Idaho Head Start Association. So those are the major changes in that document. You want me to just go ahead and go through each document and then go back or ask for questions at the end?
Yes.
What's your preference? Okay, thank you. The second piece being our community complaints and civil rights complaint resolution procedure. The change that we are proposing to make to that was to eliminate the wording that we had noticed was still there that said that there was a governing board liaison, and to replace that with our vice president of resource management, which would be Ron Dorn at this point. And NIC vice president of resource management will determine the disposition of a complaint and request that the governing board chair or at the chair's discretion a subcommittee take the steps necessary to determine facts involved in the complaint and finalize resolutions. And then moving on to the work plans. Every year, our staff development committee, which is comprised of several representatives for each job category and job description, come together and look at the plans that explain to them specifically how to do their jobs, where to look for the documentation that they need to provide, also who are the lead staff and all of the duties that each of those employees have. And so we have employees look through those quarterly and make suggestions and submit ideas for making them more readable and workable for each person to know, especially new employees, to know and understand what duties are expected of them. So all of these have been submitted by our staff development committee and will go to both yourselves and to our policy council for approval of the changes that were made. Here's the clicker. So, our Head Start program provides educational opportunities to children and services to their families made possibly by a grant from the federal government, from state TANF funding,
from USDA and also from rental income from our Harding Center and from community donations. This is our budgets and expenses, and I am happy to say that our actual expenses versus our budgeted expenses, we had no problems in any of those areas, and we were able to finish our school year out with a balanced budget. So this gives you an opportunity to see our federal grant is a $2,340,000 odd dollars, and our TANF funding is about $106,000, almost $107,000 yearly. Our USDA reimbursements is when we feed our children and our families breakfast and lunch, or lunch and a snack. These are the reimbursements we get from USDA for providing those meals. Our Harding Center income is the income that comes in from some of our renters. We have both renters that are long-term and short-term, and some events that bring in some revenue for that purpose. Our donations as well are listed there. So total income being about $2.6 million. Our personnel line items are there. Our fringe benefits, which you can see are namely our personnel is about 52% of our total budget, and our fringe benefits are about another 24% of our budget. Travel, we try to keep our travel down mostly to local and state. We do once in a while go to some national Head Start trainings. We've also got our equipment, supplies, contractual, and construction. We had no construction this last year. Our professional development funds are prioritized by making sure that teachers meet the qualifications of the 2013 Head Start School Readiness Act, which by January of 2013, we nationwide, but also within our program, are required to have all of our teachers have at least a bachelor's degree in early childhood or a equivalent degree with the equivalent of a major in early childhood. We far exceed that. We're at a much higher percentage than that already, so we're very encouraged about that. Our assistant teachers will then also need to have an associate's degree in early childhood at a minimum to reach those requirements. We can offer employment to assistant teachers who have what they call a CDA, or a child development associate, and if they're working toward their associate's degree. And that's where our partnership with being part of the college is so essential, because we really need those child development students, and we need to make sure that we have enough students coming through these programs to be able to fill the positions that we have with quality employees that understand early childhood. Our CACFP and food supplies are there, and our medical services mostly comprise of our children who do not have Medicaid insurance and do not have a way to pay for medical services. And we do things such as, if through that medical services fund, we are able to help families get their children for physicals and dentals and follow-up work that needs to be done to make sure that all the children have no barriers to learning. Now, at the bottom, you'll notice that we have generated an in-kind match to our federal grant dollars through volunteer time and donations. That is about 134% of the required amount. So we're very proud of that, because that shows that in all of our communities where we have Head Start programs, which is all 5 northern counties, we have 8 sites total, that in all of these sites, our sites were able to make their in-kind totals through the goods and services and volunteer services that show that that community is dedicated to having us there as an entity. Our facts and figures for how many children we served. We served most of our children in Kootenai County, because that is where we have the highest waiting lists Particularly, I'd like to mention Post Falls is still an area where we have probably the very highest waiting list in our program. We were able to we served 294 children, but with adds and drops and changes to people's where they live, we served a total of 351 children this last year. Please note our percentages there of children that are enrolled in Head Start due to having identified disabilities. Our program is required to make available to families at least 10% of our enrollment slots to children with disabilities. We have been able to recruit and enroll over double that. We are also enrolling, our percentage is 10% of our families total are families that were made eligible for our program based on being homeless. And that 15% of the children enrolled in our Head Start program are foster children. And those are all initiatives that we take very seriously about recruiting and enrolling the families that can benefit the most from our Head Start services. And under that, with our services to the number of families provided, those services, you see some great impressive numbers. I'm going to give out a shout out to Lorinda Buttry, who's here with me tonight. She's our Family and Community Partnerships Coordinator, and Lorinda helps all of our family advocates know what kind of community services and resources are available in each of our communities so that we can provide those resources and referrals to our families to help them be self-sufficient. This is an extremely exciting chart because it shows that our child outcomes, and we are a school readiness program, and this shows you from the fall when students have entered our program to the winter, and then again in the spring. We're measuring growth in several domain areas, and our children are excelling. They're either meeting all of the expectations or exceeding the expectations at a very high level. And so this chart is definitely impressive and exciting for us to be able to show you. And that is that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Beth Ann? Ken?
Beth Ann, could I take you back to the expenses and budgeted items handout that you gave us?
I think I can go back on. I don't know if we can even see it on here very well.
Yeah, that's it,
yeah.
right. Good, thank you. Item H under expenses is other, and it's a fairly significant amount of money. Could you describe for us what's contained within the other category?
The other category includes everything, including all of our supplies and materials that we buy for the program. They kind of come in under, if they're not equipment there on D, has to be the way that the federal government budgets it. It has to be items that are $5,000 and over. For the college's purposes, we keep track of all items on our inventory and look at anything that's $500, but the federal government in that equipment category, they only want to see things that are $5,000 and over. So it would include what they would consider supplies. For an example, under that other category last year, we had several appliances that we needed to purchase. For some reason, it seemed like all of our appliances, including stoves and dishwashers and big equipment items, we think are big equipment items, went out on us. So we ended up buying several new appliances, but they would fall under that whole other category. It's mostly just like the types of things that don't just fall specifically in those other categories, but are mostly just all the things that we buy to run our program.
Follow-up question. You mentioned those supplies, and there's another item, E,
Yeah.
which is supplies. So there must be some difference in the kinds of supplies that.
There are, and we do have a very detailed budget that we give to our policy council, and then we also send out to the Board of Trustees. So I would be more than happy, for this purpose of giving an annual report, I did our very abbreviated budget, but our detailed budget is given out monthly that shows every category, including the types of expenditures that fall under other. So I'd be happy to work on that and
Great, thank you.
get that to you.
Any other questions? Judy?
Just an observation, here we are looking at Head Start, thinking about a community college. Not too long ago, we had a report on area of aging. So in fact, as a community college, we really run the gamut from beginning to full coverage of life, which is another aspect of community colleges that isn't real visible, but it's certainly part of our purview.
Beth Ann, I have one question for you. Under medical services, I see you had about $11,000 budget, but you only used about $2,800 of the $11,000. Are you partnering with like Panhandle Health and Durney and some of these other clinics that are out there to leverage those dollars?
Yes, we are. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about that. Panhandle Health District actually does a fluoride varnishing program for our children. So once every 6 months, any child who has not been able to access a dentist and get either a thorough cleaning or fluoride is able to at least get fluoride application through our Panhandle Health District. We also have an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer that's also a registered dental hygienist, and so she's able to go around and check all our children and help leverage them to be able to get into some dentists that are willing to see our children that do not necessarily have Medicaid, or get them to providers that have the room to be able to provide those more extensive services if children have follow-up. We also work with the Durney Clinic. We work with the Connexu Health Clinic. There's the Benoit Medical Center, lots of different programs that are willing to really help us make sure that our children are fully screened and have the opportunity to remove any barriers to their learning.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Christie.
I'd just like to add that I've been to the facility many times, and it's really quite remarkable all that you and your staff do with limited funds and so many families that need the services. So once again, Beth Ann, it's a fabulous report. You're obviously doing a lot of right things. You're serving a lot of families, and it's always an honor, I think, that NIC gets to be part of the Head Start program.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is first reading, so there's no action on this. So we'll have action next month.
Thank you very much.
Tab 2, official fall enrollment, Braden Stanley.
Sorry, I've got the legs that keep hanging away here. We get it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, President Dunlap, and other guests, I know you've been anticipating for a couple months now a report on fall enrollment. I've informed you that the state reporting that used to occur on the 10th day of each semester has in fact been changed to October 15th. That's good news for all the colleges and universities because there was a lot of activity that occurred between the 10th day and October 15th. So that makes good sense to all of us. The bad news at this point is it's difficult for you to compare any trends, obviously, because we're not able to go back and look at October 15th of any previous years. In tonight's report, part of what you'll see is trends based on 10th day. We did go ahead and snap a picture at that time, so you'd have that to be able to compare to past years, plus our October 15th data, and it's changed just a bit. And in future years, you'll see a comparison based on that October 15th date. I'd like to acknowledge, before we get started, Kylene Lloyd, Ann Lewis, and others who contributed. They're really the brains behind this operation, and I'm just the pretty face that gets to stand in front of you. So I appreciate the good work that they do in putting together this report. I would like to note that it's a color disclaimer as we go through and you try to match up some of the colors. We don't have that exactly right, so I'll bring that to your attention as we go through. I also like to note that this is a good news story. The good news being that we have an increase in full-time enrollment this year. And while you're accustomed to that, that's also been like the other institutions in the state. This year we continued with that increase, and most of the other institutions in fact just stayed static or decreased. And so we felt very good about the increase in full-time enrollment. And lastly, the piece of good news is basically there is nothing real eventful in this report. There isn't anything that you can look at that's a real anomaly outside of good news, and that's in dual credit. And you'll see in one of the slides that we had a substantial increase in dual credit, which is certainly one of our goals. You have copies in front of you as well as the slides that you'll see. And I want to start with the population that we serve here on campus in terms of credit, non-credit, ABE, GED, all of that related to instruction. The trends looking from 2007 through 2011, 2012, you'll note that that's been a steady upward trend. It peaked in 2009, 2010. Certainly we think part of that is related to the economy at the time and so many people being back in the education circles because of the difficulty in finding jobs. At the same time, we noted that our fire science program was enrolling and counted in those numbers that year and has not been since. That's counted differently, and so that included in 2009 and 2010 those fire science numbers and doesn't the last 2 years, so that accounts a bit for the bump that you'll see. Moving to degrees and certificates awarded, and please feel free to stop me along the way if you have some questions you'd like to ask. One of the goals of Complete College Idaho, not one of the goals, the ultimate goal is the increase of degrees and certificates that a certain age group in the state of Idaho receives. And so a really good piece of this news is, if you'll note, as we move into 2011, 2012, that the number of degrees and certificates awarded is at an all-time high. We're thrilled with that information. We would also note that enrollment had increased so much in the previous years. That was a natural bump for us to have. There were more students in the system. You would hope that there would be more awarding of degrees and certificates. So that's natural, but it works toward that goal of more students in the state of Idaho receiving certificates or degrees.
Just a question.
Sure.
In line with that comment, you gave us the number of people with degrees and certificates, and we also know that we have the population increase. Do we have some idea of what the percentage of degrees and certificates is?
You know, we talked about that earlier today, and that percentage is close to the same percentage. That hasn't changed significantly. The number we awarded is obviously bigger. The percentage is about the same.
Another question from Mike.
Yes.
On that chart that you gave us in the materials tonight, seems a little different than the chart that was in our packet of things.
And we made an update.
Reflecting the 10-15?
Yeah, we made an update right at the end here, and this is the most accurate information, Kylene.
Yeah. Right, because the report you
The
submitted
1015, right.
had a higher number than this one does, which reflects
Some
changes.
that occurred just in that brief period of time between the 10th day and October 15th.
Thank you.
Graydon, just out of curiosity,
Yes.
do you do much of a follow-up? As an example, a student might come here and do 2 years' worth of education, not get their associate's degree, but yet continue on for 4-year education, or, you know, some other description, they might come in and get enough training to go out and get employed, but not get a certificate. I mean, when I look at the number of degrees and certificates that we issue versus a total number of students, it's very low. But we also know that there's a lot of students that are very successful at what they want to accomplish. Is there a way to judge that?
Yeah, you know, that's what the state's attempting to do, to get data collected between all of the institutions, because we're aware of the fact that that's happening. Just yesterday, I met with the University of Idaho and Lewis Clark State here in Coeur d'Alene, and they had numbers about our students who transferred to their institutions without completing their degrees here, but were working toward their bachelor's. And it's well over 50% go there before they complete here. What we're trying to work with those institutions on is the awarding of reverse credit, where those students will still meet the requirements at the University of Idaho or Lewis Clark State, transfer those credits back. So we, North Idaho College, gets credit for those students still completing their associate degree. So that's certainly an initiative of Complete College Idaho and the institutions working together, because it does happen.
But isn't there a criteria that it's degree completion in 7 years, is that correct? Or
Six.
6 years? 6
Six.
years? Okay, I was thinking 6 years.
Correct, that's the
So-
measure.
So if in fact that's the case, is it penalizing one school versus rewarding another school? As an example, a four-year school gets rewarded for all the work that we do, and we get penalized for it?
Well, our term is 3 years, so it's 3 years for an associate degree as well. So, that behavior of students of being here, transferring someplace, transferring back, it's really a hard one to follow. They move so many different directions. I don't know that I could say we're being overly penalized. The measurement isn't a good one. At the state board meeting last week, that discussion about using 6 years or 3 years and not knowing what's going on in students' lives to be able to say that student was successful or not, I think there's some agreement that that's not a good measurement to use to base it on that time frame. So work is certainly being done at the state level to address that.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, part of that too is it's a data input problem with the longitudinal data system that's really being populated with the higher ed data. The state set out to put 2 longitudinal data systems in place. They chose to populate the K-12 data first to load the system. Now, as we're getting into the post-secondary side of that system, ultimately 5 to 10 years down the road, we'll be able to track our students and say, okay, we had a student that maybe took 4 years to get through here, and then they went on to LC or U of I, and it took them another 4 years there. But we can count them as a completer, at least for our own count. We know that that student was successful in completing. By IPED's data or anybody else's measure, that student in their world will be a failure, but at least once we get data in that system, we'll be able to do that. But right now, it's tough because we just can't really measure.
Mr. Chair, I'm one of those students. I spent, several years here at NIC, well, not several, and then finished my bachelor's degree at Lewis Clark. And so President Bell actually got a hold of me and said, could you just meet with the counselor and then we will see if we can award you your associates so that you count. And because that measure of success is really the associates or the certificate, which should be interesting if that could be a different indicator. But I still haven't done that. I will.
Help the count.
One last question, Graydon.
Yes.
Is, on the certificate side, particularly on the PTE side, it appears that there's a number of students that don't complete certificates, but yet get very much the training that's necessary to become employable and accomplish exactly what they came here to start with. So how are we going to measure that? Is it, once again, it's not that cohort of people that are going to finish in 6 years. They're going to just get the education that they feel is necessary to be employable.
That's exactly the point. They certainly feel successful toward reaching their goals. They came to the program to be able to get some skills to gain employment, and in fact, they do that. And I believe that's exactly why the voluntary framework of accountability is what's going to be implemented among the community colleges, because it allows you to count that as a success. The student exiting the program because they met competency, gained some skills, and found employment. Through voluntary framework of accountability, that will be checked off as a success. Through the measures implemented in Complete College Idaho, that wouldn't be counted. So in fact, that's why we're moving that direction.
Thank you.
I'll move you to the next slide, and this is my color disclaimer. The colors don't match up to what you see there on the bottom for the legend, and it makes sense to you that the red color on the left is head count, the gold color on the right is FTE. And as I reported at the very start of this, what's important to note is that we had a 3.1% decrease in head count, but the measure that's most critical to us is FTE. That's the total number of credits generated divided by 15 is considered full-time. And so in fact, that increased by 1.1%, and that's the measure that we look at. The translation of that, as you would know, is that it's fewer students taking more classes. Part-time students, potentially those who were taking 6 credits are now taking 9. Maybe some of those full-time students who were taking 12 are now maybe taking 15. But the credit taking behavior has increased. Students are taking more from fewer students. If we move to, by the way, that was on 10th day. The next slide, and there was this change that you made some reference to. we're talking about 10th day versus October 15th now. And so just wanted to note that change. If you look at head count in the red, from the 10th day to October 15th, we had a small increase. That can be accounted for primarily through dual credit, some additional dual credit students that enrolled after that 10th day count because it's more aligned with the high schools in the area. And so you'll see some additional head count at that time. That also accounts for the increase in FTE between that 10th day and October 15th. And again, why we say that's a more accurate measure of the number of students we serve. If we move to the next slide, where we start talking about programs. As you know, the largest transfer program on our campus is certainly General Studies. And in that, it follows the trend for our entire student body. We had a 1.9% decrease in head count. We had a 1.9% increase in FTE. So it follows that same trending. You can see the raw numbers for students there. If we go to the next slide, again, comparing 10th day to October 15th, just so you could see that slight change again. If you look at head count, we have 10 more students between the 10th day and October 15th, and considerable more FTE in that period of time. Moving to the next slide, that's professional technical enrollment for credit. And we have some slides that follow that will help you understand some of this. As you look through at the trending, this was on 10th day count. There was a 13.1% decrease in head count, and that really didn't make much sense to us. When you just looked at the trends for professional technical enrollment, that shouldn't have been the case, and you can see that illustrated by the graph. It also then accounted for a 6.2% decrease in FTE. So we had a chance just in the last couple of weeks to analyze why that occurred, because it just didn't make sense to us. And in talking to Mike Myers, and then in the good work that Kylene and Ann and others do, we're able to account for that I'll share with you in just a moment. Next slide, again, is that difference between 10th day and October 15th. And I hope that's not confusing. In the future, we'll just be looking at the October 15th snapshots. But again, just a bit of an increase. And I'm taking you to now the next page, narrative, that will explain what happened that accounted for that 13% decrease. There were two grant-funded programs that really inflated our enrollment for fall of 2010 and fall of 2011 in the professional technical division. In the fall of 2011, there were 157 students, and by percentage, when you look at the total number of PET students, that's a huge percentage. They were majoring in the electronic medical records and electronic medical records IT support programs. That grant ended, and so we lost those students in that count this year. So when you look at just the data without that information, of course, it looks like we've gone down. When you account for the grant program ending, these programs ending, it makes sense of that. So all of a sudden we understood that. In fact, Mike Myers has indicated that he's looking at that program, checking the demand, and looking at reinstituting those programs if the demand is in the workplace and the students are available to go in that. If you make that adjustment for the students that we lost, in fact, that trend line for professional education continues just as you would think. We'd show a growth rate this year of 4.2%. And I'm gonna take you to that slide. And this probably looks a whole bunch better to you now. In that next one, and this is taking out then those students who were in the programs that no longer was funded through the grant. Those students were no longer here. And now the trend continues if you're comparing apples to apples. And so you would see then that 4.2% increase in headcount and a 1.5% increase in FTE. And that's what the state and professional technical division was expecting, was an increase along those lines. Does that make sense of the numbers? Let me take you to dual credit now. I know that's of interest to all of us. Dual credit is one of those areas that we had substantial increase in, and that was certainly quite intentional, and thanks to the efforts of Ginger and then all the people here on campus. We had a 1.9% increase in headcount on 10th day, which accounted for an 8.8% increase in FTE. If you go to the next slide, again, just giving you that comparison between 10th day and October 15th. And remember I said to you that dual credit classes often start later than our deadline here on campus, that 10th day. And so that's why you see that there were 20 additional students that enrolled after the 10th day. And that accounted for the increase also in FTE up to October 15th.
Graydon?
Yes.
I don't know if you have this data at your fingertips, but can you help us with the dual credit program? Part of it's taught on campus, part of it's off campus. This is a combination, is it?
Of all. And in fact, I wanted to share with you that I think you've heard the goals of the institution, that we're trying to turn that model around. I believe we have about 85% of our credits that occur associated with being here on campus, and 15% of those are the ones that are happening in the high schools. And the goal that we have at the institution is to change that around so that most of the delivery of dual credit classes is occurring at the high school and through e-classes online, and really decreasing the amount that occurs on campus, so it opens up spaces for our full-time fee-paying students here. And in fact, what we're going to do, Kylene and I talked about that, is we're going to analyze all that now to look exactly where all those students are taking classes so that we can show you that trend, and if in fact we're meeting those goals next year by turning that around.
Just as a side note, NIC has the highest number of dual credit students taking courses online of any of the 3 community colleges. And so that's an area that we want to continue to grow.
We also have the highest number of students taking classes on campus too.
Right.
So I'm going to take you to the next one, which is full-time and part-time credit enrollment, so we can take a look at that. On that slide, you'll see there's an increase. This again was 10th day. An increase is on the top line is full-time enrollment. On the bottom line is part-time enrollment. We believe, as you see, that the decrease in part-time enrollment, that goes along with our trend. We're seeing fewer students taking more classes, so that would make some sense. We also think that those students are taking more classes because of our wait listing. We had fewer students on the wait list having better access to classes here on campus. We would anticipate that with maybe getting dual credit students back out at the high school again, students will have better access to classes on campus. That may continue to drive an increase in full-time students. I want to take you to the off-campus centers. And our colors are right on there. So you can see furthest to the left is Bonners Ferry. The middle ones are the Pend Oreille and Sandpoint, and then Silver Valley, the gold ones on the right. And you will note as you compare those then that we've had some decreases in some areas. We account for that. This only reflects face-to-face classes for those students who come into the center and take the class in that facility. And what we see students doing more of is students still from that area, but taking those classes online, because you'll see in the next slide the number of students taking classes online has increased. Not that we're serving fewer students in those areas, but we're serving them through a different mode of delivery, which happens to be online. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're not serving them because they come into the offices and receive services, but they're not doing the face-to-face instruction. They're doing that instead online. Let me, if I may, take you to the next slide. That's the internet seat accounts.
Graydon, before you do that.
Sure.
Do you know from the data whether or not, even though there's an increase in the online participation, is that increase reflected from those specific areas? I mean, from the Silver Valley, from Pend Oreille, are we picking up the people that are dropping off online? Is there any way to tell that?
We haven't looked on it comparing student to student to student to make sure that, it's the same student who we counted as a face-to-face last year who's now in an internet, but that's data that we can start looking at to confirm that that's the case. That's certainly our belief, but we'll go back and take a look if we can track those students to see if their course-taking behavior changed from face-to-face to online and see if that's in fact. We believe that to be true, but we can confirm that. If we go to the next one, that's the internet seat accounts, you'll see that increase. And it's been a substantial increase over the years. Again, this was on 10th day, but moving from fall of 2008 to fall of 2012, a substantial increase all along, flattening out just a bit this year.
Why?
And I'm not sure, it may be something that Leader or Kylene or Joe might be able to reflect on. Not certain why it flattened out quite as much as it did. The increase, again, I guess when you've had such a dramatic increase, to maintain that steep a curve from year to year to year is difficult because your number's bigger. I suspect that's part of it. I don't know that there's another reason that we would attribute to that. I suspect just the larger numbers that you're working with to begin with. And I'm looking at folks nodding.
When you look at the fact our overall FTE only increased 1.1%, and you look at the net gain in internet students from 4,800 to 5,000, that's a pretty significant jump, even though it looks like it flattens out a little bit.
Let me take you to the next one, which is first-time, full-time, degree-seeking, fall-to-fall persistence. The reason we choose that group, we identified, so to give you a sense of this, in fall of 2011, we identified students who indicated that they were degree-seeking and they were enrolled on a full-time basis. Those are the ones that we believe to be most focused on completing their education, staying in school here. From fall to 2010 to fall of 2011, it was 53%. 11 to 12, it dropped to about a 4% decrease for persistence in that group. Again, we think that follows the trends because it's number of students, it's not FTE. If you've had a decrease in head count, I would think it's likely that you'd have a decrease in persistence because it's some of those students that we're talking about. It's those full-time, first-time that are included in that number of students who are not coming back. That's the decrease in head count. And let me take you to the next slide, please. The gender percentage, again, based on 10th day, and there is really not a significant change. You can look at the trends over the last 5 years and note that that's not significant, and it mirrors the national numbers for genders in higher education. Idaho counties is the next slide. And once again, no significant, and you don't have that comparison, but we certainly looked at that. Where students are coming from, certainly that large number from Kootenai County, but there's no significant change. If you compared that to numbers in previous years, you would see that those percentages are essentially unchanged. Taking you to the next slide, which is non-Idaho residents. Included in that, it certainly features the dark brown at the bottom of the bar is Washington residents. The yellow is outside of Idaho, not including Washington and Montana, but includes international students as well. And finally, the red portion of the bar is those students from Montana. And so you can see the trending there again, that a bit from outside of Idaho, that's increased. That from Washington, it decreased a bit. From Montana, it decreased a bit as well. And those are just head count numbers, not percentages, but head count numbers. So even though it goes from 100 to 90, for example, in Montana, that's 10 students. That is sometimes certainly affected by pricing, certainly affected by the cost of moving out of the area, and other factors as well. I'm going to take you to the next slide, which is top feeder high schools. Important for you to note that is sometimes confused. This is not just for students that's what happened last year. So if you looked at, for example, Coeur d'Alene High School that's indicated with 542, as much as we'd like to think that 542 of the graduates from Coeur d'Alene High School from last year all came to school here, that wouldn't be true. That's in fact of all the students attending this fall who have ever been a graduate of Coeur d'Alene High School are counted there. So it could be somebody who graduated 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or last year. And the same thing is true, the largest number that we serve is GED. And so obviously that's not the number of students who received their GED just last year, but who over the course of their lifetime received their GED and are enrolled here this fall. Wanted to take a look at the top dual credit feeder high schools too. Thought that would be of interest to you. So those, again, are head count numbers as of the 10th day, so you can see we were serving at that time. And it has gone up just a bit because we pulled in a few numbers after the 10th day, Coeur d'Alene High School being the greatest, Lakeland Homeschool certainly being substantial, Lakeland being substantial, homeschool students, and down the line. And that's the information to have to present to you tonight. We'd be glad to try to field any other questions you have. Plus, I certainly solicit your request for any other information that you'd like to see. We'll be looking closely at dual credit for this next year. We'll be looking at trying to tie those together. When we say we believe that this is why it's happened, we'll try to go back, and even if we're tracking by student names, to see if in fact that confirms what we're thinking. Questions or concerns?
Ken, you have a question?
Maybe just by way of food for further discussion, because we've talked for quite some time about the fact that given that the economy has been poor, we've seen an increase in enrollment here. And as the economy improves, there's an expectation we're going to see a drop-off in enrollment. But I guess it would be of some assistance for us in terms of future planning, I think, if we had some idea of where that drop-off was coming from, too. Are we seeing a drop-off? Because as I look at these charts and everything, there's a little confusion. Are we losing, in my mind, not necessarily for you, are we losing people from Bonners Ferry and Sandpoint, or are they being picked up in online courses, so we're not really losing them? How about our services there? Are we providing the services that we need in order to maintain a decent enrollment there, and those kinds of things? So.
Thank you. And in fact, that'll be information that we'll be bringing forward to you since we've reestablished the Enrollment Management Task Force here with subcommittees working on enrollment and retention. That'll be data that they're absolutely looking for, analyzing, and drilling down to, so it can be those specific things and tying it to reasons and subsets and different targets. So we'll come back with much more detail the next time around. There's work being done toward that end.
Thank you, Graydon.
Thank you.
Last item is information item, tab 3, quarterly review of the 2013 budget.
Chair, board members, it should follow along if we've had an increase in FTE that you have just reported, that we should have a pretty good financial picture to present to you also. And the first few are just reiterations of I think, slides that you've seen before last year that we developed. I think the thing that's changed now is a lot of this information, all of the information now, is coming out of the new budgeting software system, which is one small step in the right direction, I think, as far as how we report data to you on how we deal with it. This is the general fund budget. It shows, again, the breakdown of our revenue budget for fiscal year 13. The largest portion of the revenue coming from tuition and fees and property taxes, with the state appropriation a fair amount smaller. PTE is a state funded, but we've broken that out, so if you would want to add them together, that would be a 33%, but we have chosen in our discussions just to separate that out and show you that as two separate figures. The difference being that the PTE money is allocated to specifics in PTE. The general fund state appropriation, we get to basically spend as an institution how we see fit with, of course, your approval. And then the other side of that would be the expenditure budget. If you add the salary and benefits together, 56, 66, 71%, approximately 71. Got that right? No, that's 18%. I can't even see it that far away.
74.
74% of it is in salary and benefits, and the balance of that is in M&O. Out of that maintenance and operation figure, that 25%, $3,690,107 of that is the depreciation transfer. That deals with foregone taxes and the money that we put into the plan fund to fund plan fund operations. The next slide shows the fiscal year 13 actual revenue to date versus the revenue budget. And it's approximately 56% for tuition and fees. The state appropriation, we have most of that in, but not all of it. Property taxes are collected closer to the first of the year. They come in at a later date. PTE money we get, that comes in later on in the fall for us. And our other revenue, parking, permits, fees, fines, and other types of miscellaneous revenue, we're trending pretty well with that. We're trending on track for that right now. So really in pretty good shape at this point in time on a first quarter estimate of revenues collected. And the same thing on the expenditures, the fiscal year 13 actual versus the budget. Percentage-wise, when we look at that compared to where we were last year at this point in time, fiscal year 12, we don't anticipate any problems with this. It looks pretty good at this point in time for us.
Ron, can I ask you a question on that slide before you go? Under the benefits column, I would imagine some of the benefits expenditures are come at certain times of the year, like premiums on insurance and that sort of thing, as opposed to coming equally in different quarters.
That would be correct. That would be correct.
Is that why we're not seeing that the benefits amount is, even though we're looking at a quarter here, it's not a quarter of that? I mean,
That would be most of it, Ken. Yes, it would. That should, if I were doing, when I do the next estimate probably in January, because I think we can get to the data quicker than we did last year, you'll see a significant increase in that by that point in time. And this is our fiscal year 13 expense forecast versus the expense budget. And you see it looks like it might be a little bit up in the salary area, a little bit down in the benefit area, and pretty close in the others. That'll make more sense when I go to the last figure and when I estimate where we're going to end the last year with a surplus versus deficit. And the one thing that we're doing under this new system, both on the salary and benefits, Profex compares, when they make an analysis like this for us, a forecast, they're comparing it against last year's figures, because that's all that they have to go on, what we spent at this time, period in time to fiscal year 12. And in the salary area, there might have been, last year, there might have been more on-filled positions or under-filled positions at this point in time last year than there are this year. So it says, what am I actually spending this year versus where I was last year? So we've got some things to look at in there, but overall, again, we feel we're in pretty good shape on this. I think it'll even itself out. And again, we don't have a history with this, much as Graydon was telling us some of his figures. So we're working hard with this to make sure that we understand it as well as we like to. But again, we feel pretty comfortable with what this has shown us, where we're going to end up the year pretty close to the budget. And in fact, based on at least the 2 years I've been here and at the rate we're going with our expenditures now, we should be a little bit under budget with the expenditures by the end of the fiscal year. And the same thing with the revenue forecast. You know, we have a 1.1% growth in FTE, although we budgeted for a 3%, and we might ask why that is up. Well, that is based on last year's revenue collections, and obviously with a 1.1% increase over last year, we would be projecting more revenue at this point in time. That's how Profex is looking at these projections. That's why the state appropriation would be about the same. Property taxes are pretty close. PTE, there's a little bit more, and we're projecting a little bit more in other revenue. What that shows you on the forecast is that the revenue budget is $42,400,000, and they're projecting right now a $42,929,000 in revenue. That's about a $450,000 increase. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen when it levels itself out again, because it's comparing it against last year. And so that will not be anywhere near, at least at this point in time, that type of an increase. And I think even in the expense budget, we had $42,462,000 budget, and the forecast is for $42,642,000 in expenditures, which is about 150 over. I doubt that's going to happen as we go through the year. But again, it takes last year at this point in time and extrapolates it out for this year for us. The next slide is the fiscal year 13 actual expenditures compared to the budget, and we've given you the bar graph. When we did this last year, we've given you the percentages, and none of those percentages of the actual expenditures versus the budget are really, for us, concern us at this point in time. We seem to be we're in a range that we're comfortable with. And this does it by NACUBO category, which is academic support, academics, institutional support, etc. This tab is the fiscal year 13 versus the fiscal year 12 actual expenditures, and this is trying to show you in a different light what I was explaining before, what Profex picks up when it makes a forecast. So you can see the fiscal year 13 actuals versus 12s would be a little bit over at this point in time, because actually we have a little bit higher budget than we had last year. But still pretty close and really in pretty good shape at this point in time. And this is a compilation of what we've looked at, everything that we looked at, the revenue and the expenditures. And if we were to take the forecast that Profex has given us, based on what I've told you, we project a $287,000 surplus by the end of the fiscal year. I'd be the first to tell you it's probably going to be, as I said last year, it's going to be closer between 0 and 100 to 150,000 by the time this levels itself out. But this is an exciting tool for us, because makes a calculation for us, and one of the questions you've had before, this is gonna allow us now to make a 3 or 4 year forecast based on the data we have in here right now, which is what we're working on, trying to work on in the system at this point in time. And again, this is the general fund only. This is not, does not include auxiliaries, grants, or other non-general fund items. And we had a discussion, it would come up, we had a good meeting with the Finance Committee going over this information last week, and one of the things that we talked about doing that I think we'll be prepared to do at the November meeting is we're gonna have these other funds report on their budgets, just like I reported on the general fund. They haven't been told that yet, but they will be. They will know if any of them are in here. We're gonna have auxiliaries report on auxiliaries. I'll do a grant report because that comes out of my office. I'll report on grants, and we'll have a report on again, any fund that was not in the general fund will be reported on at the next meeting. We're gonna try to get them to report in this format. Their data isn't in here. I'm hoping we can get it in, but if not, you will get a report. And that'll happen each time that I do a quarterly estimate. You get a report on these other funds. With that, I'd be glad to, I'm sorry, there's another question that came up, and I'm gonna answer the question before it gets asked. With this new system, we're doing a year-long estimate for you. We can do this on a quarterly basis. We can break this down. Instead of estimating for the whole year, we can estimate it on a quarter basis, and I plan on going over that with the Finance Committee at the next meeting. And hopefully I can bring that back either at the next meeting, or I'll bring it back at the next time I report on the quarter, which is halfway through the year, but we can break it down. And there was some discussion that might make more sense and be more easily understandable to the public and to the board if I break it down and just take, how did we do in this first quarter? Because Profex budgets by the month, and therefore I can easily pick out the quarter and present the same data but on a quarterly basis. So we're looking to do that at the next time that I report. Are there any
Questions for Ron?
No, that was, I think we can see that the software was a very good decision.
We do appreciate it. It was a very good decision, I think, on your part to let us do that. And as I said before, it will pay dividends for this institution in forecasting and the different ways we can report in the next, in the next couple of years. We'll be there. So I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Ron. Next on your agenda is the board chair report, which is my report. So I'll go over a few things. First of all, once again, Asnick, thank you very much for last night. You guys are probably feeling like you're taking up camp here. Join the crowd. We are too. That was a very good forum last night, and I appreciate you doing it. Also today, it was kind of a busy day because there was the library open house, which seemed to be very well attended. That was fun. I had a chance to learn some new things about the technology going on at the library. If you haven't had a chance to go look at the technology and some of the new online opportunities at the library, Judy and I were both there today. It was exciting, so you definitely should check that out. The art dedication today was very interesting. I think, once again today, to see the history of the education corridor, and those of us that have been working on that for many, many years, you drive across there, and thank you to Gary and people like that have been working on that project for a long time. You drive through there now and you see the trees and the grass and all the beauty, and I think 2 years ago it was a mill site. It's quite an accomplishment to see what it is today, and it's just exciting to think what it's going to be years to come. It's for our kids and grandkids and everybody else to enjoy. So it's just it's a stepping stone. Another item that was already discussed a little bit was the board chairs meeting and the president's meeting that we had here on campus on this past Friday. It was interesting because we had Jerry G, Joe, myself, and Jerry Beck here on campus, and then the others were connected via video conference, and the video conference was totally seamless. I mean, it was so easy. I mean, we were all looking at each other and talking back and forth. it's an amazing way to be able to conference around the state. And it was a very good meeting. We accomplished a lot of things. Some of the items we really took a long look at was dual enrollment. What's going to happen with dual enrollment statewide? How can we serve students across the state as the 3 community colleges? We took a lot of time on online education. With the Luna laws now possibly going into effect, we know that there's going to be the 2 classes offered for every student in high school if the laws stay intact. And we want to be the default mechanism for students to look at is the community colleges in Idaho. So that was a couple of areas. We touched briefly on the out-of-district tuition concept that we've been banting around. So that's still out there. A lot of things that are still being discussed. We want to be the default operation for any student in high school. If they're looking at going on to school, the community colleges, we want them to be one of the first options. And it doesn't matter if it's us or LCA or us or CSI or CWI. Well, it kind of does, but we want to work in conjunction with them and not so much in competition with them. So particularly on dual enrollment and distance education, we want to serve the students the best and not be territorial. So that was kind of some of the things. We do have a meeting coming up on December 13th. Is that the day we decided, or 14th? It's either the 13th or the 14th. The State Board of Education is going to be meeting at NIC. And when they're here, we're actually going to have a joint meeting once again of the board chairs and the presidents. So that was kind of an outreach of that program. And last but not least, CSI was playing NIC that night in volleyball, and I got no odds, and had to take a wager for an adult beverage with the board chair from CSI on the volleyball game, and I lost. So. Darn. We're going to have a talk with our volleyball team, I see. Last but not least, I would also like to thank Ron Wieselmeyer for your service over the last 6 years. It's been a joy and a privilege to work with you. You've been a great board member, and you're going to be sorely missed. But I also understand that you and your wife are going to enjoy life and not spend 3.5-hour board meetings on Wednesday nights any longer. So on behalf of the board, I would like to thank you for your service and your dedication to North Idaho College. And that's the end of my report. And I would open it up for the remarks for the good of the order.
Mr. Chair, I have a question? Well, first one thing, this is fantastic. Thank you for giving us. This is a beautiful magazine. And the second question for you, in your conversations with the other board chairs, last year we opened the door to the conversation about the liquor fund, but we didn't push. So is there any conversation this year about having that be a priority discussion?
Yes, there is. We talked about that actually in our meeting in July. I think it was, what happened was we actually went and had a presentation with the Association of Counties and Cities and didn't get very far with them. So we've kind of backed away from that and said, let's look at another tack. One of the approaches was let's not look at the liquor fund as the default funding mechanism for out-of-district tuition. Let's look at a different funding mechanism. So one of the things we proposed was go to the state general fund, leave the liquor fund going to the counties intact, so they don't have to use that as their payment to for education. So that gives them more money in their general fund as counties, but then go back to the state and ask the state general fund for around $4 million to offset that. Once again, it didn't get a lot of traction at that point.
I wouldn't think so.
So we're looking at a lot of things. Mark, do you have any insight, or Joe, you might give some insight on that too. But I mean, it's an issue that we're still looking at. It's something that needs to be addressed. We can't continue to be at $500. We understand that. But we have to look at a way that is fair to kind of all the counties, particularly some of the counties that are really upside down. The biggest problem that we're having is educating the counties that even though they're using their liquor funds, in a lot of cases they're dipping into their general fund to pay the difference because they've got more students coming here or coming to community colleges than what they have funds to pay for. So it's really becoming an education process of really getting to the counties to understand the problem more than coming to a solution at this point in time.
Thank you.
Judy.
Just to highlight to everybody, it may not be the most erudite source, but the most recent magazine, issue of Time magazine focuses on reinventing college education. There's some very thought-provoking and interesting events that are already happening and predictions ahead, which are clearly a factor in what we'll be doing. So take a look.
Anything else for the good of the order? Yes, sir.
You had already thanked Ron for his service, and I wanted to join that, but since we're going to have an opportunity to embarrass him as much as possible on the 9th of November, I just wanted to publicly say thank you. And since, because of the way in which the election affects the appointment, sitting on this board, apparently this is going to be your last meeting. The election will take place, and the swearing in of the new trustee to fill your seat will occur before the next meeting, so we are going to miss you at the next meeting, and I'm sorry to see that.
I want to say, I will probably say some things on the 9th. I haven't given it much thought yet, but I want to thank every one of you. It's been a real privilege working with you, and you've been a board that, while we had disagreements from time to time, we always seem to come together through compromise, and we're united in the end in the decisions that were made. And for that, I really want to thank every one of you. You've been very professional, but you're also very good friends, and I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we're adjourned.